Well, good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Council meeting on April 15th, 2025. Welcome to everyone here in the gallery and those watching on YouTube. I will start with a roll call of council. I, Mayor Shantz, am present and chairing this meeting. Councillor Grant. Oh, we went backwards. It's all over the place. Councillor Grant. Present. Councillor Bryant. Present. Councillor Burgess. Present. Councillor Cadeau. Present. And Councillor Schwind. Present. They're keeping me on my toes. Before we get going on the agenda items, council needs to reconvene in open session. Do we have a motion to reconvene? Councillor Bryant, Councillor Grant, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I acknowledge that the land on which we live has been here from time immemorial, and the Indigenous people have lived here from time immemorial. And I thank the Chinatan, also called the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people who have lived here and cared for this land and who continue to share and steward this land with us. May we together learn to care for each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. I'll just mention that we're coming up into some celebrations of Easter and Passover, and maybe you just celebrate bunnies and eggs in springtime, but just ask you to be careful and be safe in everything that you do. April 21st is Earth Day, and if you're looking for a way to participate in Earth Day activities, we have the Woolwich Community Cleanup next week from April 21st to 26th, and details can be found on our website at woolwich.ca. Also, one of tonight's Climate Action Plan delegations are students from Riverside Public School. And since this is a school night, I would ask council if we would agree to have a flexible agenda so we can move that item to an earlier time. I'm seeing nods. I think that's good enough. So then I need to switch to another set of papers. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have one item to come forward from closed session, and that is that the Council of the Township of Woolwich ratifies the collective bargaining settlement entered into with the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 1542, for 2025 through 2027. Moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Cadeau. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have minutes from March 18th and Committee of the Whole from April 1st. Would someone like to move those? Councillor Bryant, Councillor Grant, all those in favor? And that's carried. We have no public meetings. And I thought we were moving the kids up. Let's go to the kids. Okay. One moment. I don't have a 10.2 on here. Okay, here, the instruction for delegations. Okay. We agreed to be flexible on the agenda, and I'm being even more flexible, which is just confusing me a little bit more, so please bear with me. Individual delegates have a maximum of 7 minutes, and group delegates have 10 minutes unless the clerk has set a different time. There will be a timer on the screen, and you'll hear a warning when you have 1 minute and when your time is up. Once you're finished, you can return to your seat and you may stay for the rest of the meeting or leave when you want. Council will hear from all speakers and ask questions of clarification. Council discussion and debate will start when all speakers on a topic have finished. So am I going right down here? Okay, so we'll do the climate action plan update first. then. And David, you wanted to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Council. Just before Anna speaks, I thought it would be good for me to talk about some of the background context, I think, leading into where we are at this state of time in Woolwich. Certainly, as we develop a climate action plan to implement the Transform WR strategy, it's given us an opportunity to reflect on some of the good history in the township leading up to this point. Some of the things that, I think want the public to be aware of is that when it comes to growth management, the Township of Woolwich has had a long history of phased managed growth. And a lot of that has been related to making sure that we grow in a responsible and sustainable manner, certainly not too fast. You broaden the definition around sustainability. It also has other factors with respect to the sustainability in terms of keeping up with the financial requirements of delivering on services and programs to the growth that occurs. So, that certainly has been a long-standing history in the Township of Woolwich, certainly been leaders in the region with respect to that, long before certainly staged managed growth was more popular. I think the other thing is it's a great opportunity also to reflect that there is a great foundation with respect to the volunteer commitment throughout the township over the years. As council can appreciate, sustainability happens in many different ways. And, whether it be Woolwich Healthy Communities, TWEAK, our Township of Woolwich Environmental Enhancement Committee, that is, or with respect to, the more recently formed Woolwich Environmental Advisory Committee, and even for that matter, with respect to Trees for Woolwich over the years. And more recently, you've had the not-for-profit organization Reforest Woolwich. A lot of good grassroots volunteerism, and that's what Woolwich has been known for in so many areas, whether it's the Elmira Maple Syrup Festival and the volunteerism. But here I want to speak tonight about the foundation and the roots behind a lot of the groups that have existed, and by virtue of that, a lot of the individuals that have championed for many years, the need to take appropriate actions in the right direction in terms of climate action, et cetera. And that brings us up to the modern day in the sense that, as council is well aware, we certainly are still dealing with unprecedented pressures related to growth. Staff from planning and development this year will be bringing forward phasing and staging plans with respect to Elmira and St. Jacobs and Breslau. And the reality is that sustainability will be front and center as we develop and grow in so many different ways and means that it will be important. And I'd be remiss if I also didn't use the opportunity to mention that over the last many number of years, we see more and more extreme weather events, whether that be ice storms, flooding, or whatever the case may be. And certainly, the work that Anna is doing now tailors and fits very well into other departments like emergency management, and the fact that we need to do work related to climate adaptation, climate mitigation, with respect to protecting our infrastructure long-term, and the realities that the changing climate and the extreme weather events, affects on things. So I just wanted to open with that, Madam Mayor, is to talk a little bit about the foundational, really grassroots history of caring about the environment, caring about sustainability, but also recognizing that as we continue to be on the cusp of great growth pressures, and as we continue to be on the cusp of having to deal and mitigate more and more extreme weather events, the actions that we take forward in the future will be certainly important. And this climate action plan that is being developed, with this being a touch point tonight, and June with the final report, will be very much trying to lay the foundation on real actions to be able to recognize that we want to be, again, part of our history, part of our future as well, being responsible when it comes to implementing the Transform WR strategy and the various actions. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. So before we introduce our delegates, I'll turn the floor over to our Climate Action and Sustainability Coordinator, Anna Harrison, to present her report.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, members of council. Thank you for having me here tonight. So I'm going to be providing an update on Woolwich climate action and including the draft actions as David introduced. So first I'm going to provide an overview of where we're at in terms of our emissions inventory for 2024, both for the community and the corporate emissions. I'll also be highlighting the recommendations, I'll be summarizing the highlights and recommendations from a recent greenhouse gas reduction pathway feasibility study. And finally, reviewing the Woolwich Climate Action Plan and having a discussion about the draft actions. So to begin, I wanted to first share our corporate greenhouse gas emissions inventory for 2024. As a reminder, when we do talk about emissions, we separate them out into corporate, which is what we generate as a corporation in terms of our facilities and our operations. And we talk about emissions in terms of the community, which is captured in the Transform WR strategy. So right now I'm going to talk about our corporate. And if we look at 2024, we'll see, again, that natural gas is our #1 source of emissions at 71%, followed by fleet at 24%, and electricity making up only 5% of our emissions, and propane at less than 0%. Something new that we've added this year, which is an optional reporting category, is the emissions associated with staff's daily commutes to and from work, which is about 192 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year, which, if it was counted in the total, would be our 3rd highest source of emissions. So it is something important to monitor each year. But I am happy to start off with some good news that we did reduce our emissions 7% from last year, which was about 141 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. And so how do we do this? Partly it was due to warmer seasonal temperatures, which resulted in less natural gas use to heat our facilities, as well as less fuel from our heavy-duty fleet vehicles, less plowing and salting of roads. But there were some other factors that came into play for our reductions, including installation of 3 new heat pumps at the Breslau and Heidelberg community centers and the Conestoga Clubhouse, and some decarbonization initiatives at the WMC. I also wanted to acknowledge that in addition to the operational changes that we've made to decarbonize, we have been doing some behavioral climate actions as well. We have a new community e-waste recycling program, a town hall. We have a new corporate coffee pod recycling program. We've had 2 successful Woolwich Climate Action community heat pump events, and we have another solar panel event planned for June. And I want to acknowledge all the great work that Tweak has been doing, including an EV event of their own, a native plant sale and gardening 101 events, and establishment of a new eco book club with many more events and initiative plans. So important to acknowledge the behavioral initiatives that have been going on as well. So I just want to briefly reiterate why we talk about decarbonization and why it's important. The graph on the left shows our consumption in 2024. So in light blue is our electricity, and in dark blue is our natural gas. Natural gas, sorry. So we can see with the light blue, our electricity, we used over 3 million kilowatt hours of energy. And then on the graph on the right shows the emissions that are associated with this energy use. So we only produced about 100 tons from the 3 million kilowatt hours. Whereas we see the opposite with natural gas. We used about 700,000 cubic meters of natural gas and produced about 13 times the amount of greenhouse gas emissions. And this is largely due to the decarbonization of our electrical grid in Ontario. Okay, so now on to community emissions. So the region of Waterloo has taken a regional approach to quantifying the emissions in the region. So we are lumped in with everybody else for our inventory for the community. And so similarly, the emissions that are leading are transportation, workplaces, and homes, followed by agriculture and waste. And so as a reminder, we have, along with the other municipalities in the region, committed to reducing our emissions 50% by 2030 and 80% by 2050 from a 2010 baseline. And in the Transform WR strategy, they've identified 6 transformative actions, which they would hope to see by 2025 through the implementation of the plan. These focus on active transportation and public transit, zero emission vehicles, getting off of gas, using less, wasting less, focus on local food systems, and increasing equity, prosperity, and resiliency for all. So you'll see later on in the climate action plan, I've tried to align our goals with these actions. So while it is helpful to have a community-wide emissions inventory, region-wide community inventory, it's also really helpful to know what we're in Woolwich producing in terms of our emissions. So we are working on isolating our Woolwich community data. Right now we're calling it an emissions profile because we're working on, we have natural gas data from Enbridge, and we're working on getting electricity data. We hope to, in the future, have transportation, agriculture, and waste data as well. But for now, we have the most significant energy source, which is natural gas. And so this was brought on by the help of Green WR, obtaining this data for 2023. The data for 2024 is pending. But what we know and what we can see from this graph, the black line represents actual data, and this is actual Enbridge data from residential, commercial, and industrial customers. So for 2010 to 2023, we have actual data. And in 2023, the community of Woolwich consumed over 56 million cubic meters of natural gas, which equates to approximately 108,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. And so the red line indicates what will happen if we continue operating a business as usual by changing nothing. The green line is our path to reach our first target, which is reducing emissions 50% by 2030, which would bring us down to over 18 million cubic meters or 35,000 tons of carbon dioxide to meet that 2030 target. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly highlight some recommendations that came from a recent report. So in 2023, the Township of Woolwich was awarded a grant from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, to complete a greenhouse gas reduction pathway feasibility study. The intent of the study was to evaluate how to integrate energy and greenhouse gas reductions into our short and long-term management of our municipal facilities and to inform future climate action plans. The study identified and evaluated potential retrofit opportunities and greenhouse gas reductions at 5 of our facilities, which include the WMC, St. Jacobs Arena, Breslau Community Center, St. Jacobs Fire Hall, and the Elmira Administrative Building. And the study provided several pathways that we can take to reach our targets of 50 by 30 and 80 by 50. So the main recommendations from the report were to replace natural gas, HVAC equipment, and water heating equipment with air source heat pumps and other alternatives, and integrate building automated systems and other controls to better manage our natural gas consumption, recover waste heat for reuse in facilities, decommission the CHP plant at the WMC, and satisfy additional electrical demand with the addition of solar panels. And so I just wanted to touch on the CHP a little bit. This did come up in a previous council meeting. And one of the very clear findings from the report was we cannot meet our targets if we continue to operate the CHP. This graph illustrates just how much natural gas this facility produces. And of the roughly 500,000 cubic meters that it produces, 310 of this come from the CHP directly, and produces around 600 tons just from the CHP of carbon dioxide. Okay. So now I just want to briefly talk about the Climate Action Plan. So just as an overview, the Woolwich Climate Action Plan is a 5-year plan to reduce our emissions to meet our targets. It focuses on both corporate and community actions that we can take to reach our targets. This first version, 2025 to 2030, is going to be crucial as it will take us through to our first greenhouse gas reduction target of 50% by 2030. There are 6 corporate actions and 32 community actions identified that span short term, which is 1 to 3 years, medium term, 3 to 5 years, long term, 5+, or ongoing actions. And they are a mix of behavioral and operational actions, as both are equally as important in achieving our emissions reductions and creating that very necessary culture shift. And so there are 5 goals that I've identified that each of these actions fall under. They are aligned with the Transform strategy. They focus on circular communities, which relates to reducing waste, low carbon infrastructure in our buildings, empowering residents, and creating resilient communities through adaptation measures. And of course, sustainable modes of sustainable transportation. And just a little bit of background on how these actions were identified. There was extensive research done on existing municipal climate action plans, particularly ones of our size. There was community feedback at the early stages of development through the Climate Change Engagement Survey, which helped me to identify those priority areas that were important to residents. There was a lot of review and alignment to Transform, because I don't want to have that as a separate document. It needs to be integrated into this document as part of our community strategy. And as part of that, there were discussions with Climate Action WR and Sustainable Waterloo Region. And then finally, the draft climate actions were reviewed extensively by SMT staff and provided to WEAC for their review as well. Okay, so next steps, the ask for council. We would like your feedback and direction on the draft action plan. We decided to do a touch point before the final version to really understand your priorities. We want to identify any gaps, any additional opportunities that we can explore. When it comes to June and approving the plan, we want it to be something that you are comfortable with approving in June, and we really would value your feedback at this stage. And in June, we will see the final Woolwich Climate Action Plan in its entirety, and we will be doing a detailed summary of costs and greenhouse gas reductions where applicable throughout the 5-year plan, so you'll have a better idea of how much things will cost moving forward. So just a brief overview of the timeline where we're at. So we've developed the first draft between now and June. We'll take your feedback into consideration and draft up or create the final draft that will be presented to you in June. And then from there, start implementing the actions. And then annually in the spring, kind of like I did starting this presentation, I'll provide an overview of where we're at and how many actions are in progress, how many we haven't started yet, how many we've completed, just so we can keep on track of the plan. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for that good overview of where we're at. Are there any questions for Anna? No, I'm not seeing any. I am seeing one. Councillor Schumacher.
So this parallel to the plan, as a township, we declared a climate emergency. So I'm just trying to understand my definition of the emergency. You do something right away and that's front and center of your mind. And to me, our climate emergency as a township is probably one of 10 issues on our minds. So I'm wondering if that's something we as a council need to discuss, or could staff let us know how they, I guess, focus the emergency in their planning process?
Thank you, Councillor Schmidt. I don't think climate needs to be considered as a separate issue. I think it can be integrated into a lot of our existing issues that we have. I think that's sometimes why it gets put on the back burner is people, prioritize other things over that. But we can work, with our finances team, our emergency services team. It really is going to be a plan that we implement across the organization. So it's going to involve all the departments, like I mentioned, corporate and community. So it doesn't have to be a separate issue.
Different from an emergency of a flood that is very specific now. I think that's what you were getting at, maybe?
Specific now, you take action now, but it's a priority in what you're doing. You spend the money to fix the problem now versus it's a consideration when planning whatever, your next rec center or buying the fire truck. Is it a consideration or is it the priority? I don't think we as a township, we aren't living up to what we had said several years ago. And maybe that's right and proper, but we need to think about that.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor, through you to staff. I know that you're seeking input from council moving forward. If I could provide some of my initial thoughts around this, it's really, you've provided us with quite an ambitious plan, you really have, and I think that that's great. I think my concern stems from our operational and financial capacity to implement a lot of them. So I guess my question for you is, how can we make targeted decisions that really identify that high impact infrastructure, and how can we guide our decisions around what's going to make the most impact?
Thank you for you, Mayor. It's a great question. And we are working on that phased, staged approach. As David mentioned, it's not going to be, that's why there's these different timelines. We're going to operate in short, medium, long. Some of the actions don't require any sort of financial, any sort of funding or finances. So, it's part of that behavioral shift. But come June, I think maybe you'll feel a bit better about where we're going with it, because we are taking inventory of all of our assets when they're coming due, and we're going to present some options for decarbonization of those assets. What that means in terms of dollars, what that means in terms of emissions. So it will come down to some difficult decisions for council to kind of, make those decisions. But it will be also something that we can discuss at every budget time as well. But also remember that there's the climate action levy, which that's going to be a big focus of our finances. And in June, I'm going to provide a breakdown of how we're going to spend that most effectively. And there's also some funding opportunities and some grants that we'll go after too. So it's not all going to be taxpayer dollars. We're going to do our best to seek out other opportunities.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Councillor Cadeau.
Yeah, if I can follow up on that. Just briefly, in your presentation, it was pretty evident that the CHP plant at the WMC is a big issue for us. Speaking of making informed decisions around those high emitting infrastructure pieces, and maybe Colm, you can help me on this. I sent you a frantic email just a moment ago. I'm trying to get a sense of how much of our entire emissions comes from that one plant, the CHP plant. Do we have a number of what that is?
It's 600 tons.
Percentage wise though, if we're trying to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50 by 30, is that going to be 40% of our emissions, for instance?
Well, we emit about 1,800 tons per year, and 600 of that is from the CHP. So it is a
30%.
it's a significant chunk. So we do have that, and we are exploring some options for CHP, and in June we will present some options for moving forward.
I look forward to that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just for you, Mayor Jean, just based on Anna's math, just a math check here, that's about 1/3 of our emissions. 600 over 1,800 is 1/3 of our total emissions is driven by that CHP engine.
Okay. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, and I appreciate that we're able to drill down on some of the Woolwich specific data. I know when we've had WR come and present, it's hard to get a good grasp of what we're contributing to the region, so I find that's very helpful. I did like what was included in this plan was an acknowledgement of finding external funding, because we are going to need to rely on not just volunteers and residents, but also our provincial and federal partners in finding some funding to do many of this work. One item, and just because someone mentioned floods, I did notice that you had under emergency services a fire smart program. I think it might also be beneficial for us to have a water smart program of some sort, as I know many residents in Maryhill just had their basements try to wash away. So it might be helpful to also include that, as we have a lot of riverways and as part of it. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Brenneman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to council, just to kind of align some of what Councillor Schwint spoke about and what Councillor Cadeau spoke about from a decision and budget and the CHP. There's no doubt that the next stage in the process is to look at the plan, the phased-in plan, and the budgetary impacts, and to even Councillor Grant's point, the opportunities for grant funding. But more specifically, the CHP and a discussion centered around there will be an interesting discussion, because for quite a number of years, we've benefited from electric cost savings, right? And so it'll be a choice in terms of meeting our targets or electricity cost savings, right, as well. So it won't just be about the pure realities around these are the projects, these are the budget dollars. Historically, we've benefited from reduced electricity, hydro cost savings. And obviously, though, it's a key decision that council will be faced with, is you can see the driving impact of the CHP and how it's negatively impacting our ability to meet the target as well. So just wanted to note that.
Okay. Thomas.
If I can just add a little bit to the CHP conversation, and a part of before Anna joined the township, we went through that process with assistance from FCM, working with Simcoe and Enviro Stewards to look at those 5 buildings. We're kind of taking that, and now that we have Anna on the team, she's working with our facilities department to take a more wholesome look at all of our buildings to see what that GHG reduction is going to look like when we install air source heat pumps or electric hot water heaters, that sort of thing. So that's going to be brought forward in June. On the CHP, that fulsome analysis is going to be brought forward as well too. There's a lot of moving pieces there, like, a service contract that we're in now that would cost us $80,000 to exit if we were to exit in November. We still owe $1.3 million on the unit itself because it was a 20-year purchase. But at the time that the CHP was installed and the study was completed in 2017, it resulted in a savings of $74,000 annually for the township. Those savings were clawed back between 2019 and just last month when carbon tax was increased annually. And now, as of a month ago, the carbon tax is no longer. So we're back to a position where we're saving dollars, but we're not saving GHGs, and that's obviously a huge impact on our corporate greenhouse gas emissions. So, like David said, some very difficult conversations for council to come in June, but we will have all the information you need before you in terms of dollars and cents and GHG savings for council to make an informed decision.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so many things are moving targets, right? Okay, thank you then. Thanks, Anna, for the work, and nice summary of where we're at. So thank you. We have 2 delegates on this, and first delegates are from Riverside Schools, ECOSchools student team. And I would like to welcome Jenny Sater, Claire Anderson, and Claira Cadeau. Welcome, ladies. Do you want to use the one on the table for the girls? Would that be easier? Excellent. Sorry, we don't have a step for you. Can you press the button? There we go. Perfect. Well, welcome. You can start whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor Johnson, Woolwich councillors. Thank you for letting us speak today. We are grade 4 students from Riverside Public School in Elmira. My name is Claire Cadeau.
My name is Claire Anderson. Today we are here to speak about climate change. We've realized that the earth is changing in ways that feel bad for us and other living things. We are worried that there are not enough people doing things about it.
We are worried about emissions polluting the air and warming the planet. We are worried about climate change causing flooding in our town. We are worried about animals being forced out of their habitats because it's hard for them to adapt quickly for new places to live. We are worried about losing power for long periods of time because of bad storms.
We know that Waterloo Region's goal is to reduce emissions from greenhouse gases to 50% by the year 2030. That's only 5 years away. Do you think most people know about this goal and understand how important it is for our future?
At last year's Earth Day Assembly, we learned that more than half of the total emissions from average people in Ontario come from just 4 things: flying, driving, heating, and cooling their homes, and eating beef. Do you think most people know these things are causing climate change?
At school, we are part of an ECOSchools team of 24 students who volunteer at our lunchtimes to help the environment stay green. Last year, we got the Platinum Award, which is the highest level we can achieve in ECOSchools.
You're still reading. We do many activities for the whole school to get involved in, such as collecting weekly classroom recycling, celebrating Earth Day in April, and cleaning up garbage around the town every spring.
Our team is also doing several things to try and help combat climate change. 1. We planted 167 trees in our schoolyard this year. They absorb water to help with flooding, they act as a windbreak, they provide food for animals and people, and they absorb carbon dioxide.
2. We celebrated National Sweater Day and turned down the heat to educate people about dressing for the weather and using less heating and cooling in their homes.
3. Our whole school had a Métis educator come in and tell us a traditional Métis story about the giving tree that helped us learn about only taking what we need from our planet. She also taught us about different ways of giving thanks to the earth for what we use.
4. In March, we led an action with our school to switch off the lights for Earth Hour and asked families to participate in Earth Hour on the weekend to raise awareness about climate change.
5. We planted a barfly garden to create habitat for insects and birds. Every year, we help take care of it by weeding it and planting more seeds.
6. This year, our team decided to really encourage students to use active transportation instead of once-a-year event. We are celebrating a walk to school Wednesday every month. Our team goes to school early. One of us dresses up as our mascot, Rolly Raccoon, and we meet all the kids who walk, bike, scooter, or ride the bus and give them stickers to thank them for not taking a car.
We are wondering what the township is doing about climate change. Are you building ways for water to get into the ground? Are you building green roofs? Are you adding more bike lanes? Are you increasing public transit? Are you putting more solar panels on township buildings like Woolwich Memorial Center? Are you adding more high-density housing so that we fit more people in a smaller space?
Are you thinking about adding wind turbines? Are you encouraging people to reduce their emissions?
Kids like us know about keeping our earth green because we are learning about it in school. We know that many adults did not learn about it in school. Kids are not old enough to make huge decisions for change, so we need you to help us. We want our earth to stay green for our future and future generations after us.
Thank you so much for listening to us and hearing about our concerns. Any questions?
Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. Yes. No. And yeah, thank you for all the many things that you're doing at your school, the trees and Earth Hour and the pollinator garden. And I'll start off with a question. I wonder if there was anything that you saw that surprised you about the pollinator garden. Did you see anything that you weren't expecting? Or when you planted it, did something strike you as surprising?
We had more animals coming into our yard because they liked our yard for the food.
Cool. Anyone else? No? No. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. And we look forward to your leadership in the future. You're in grade 4, and I think it's great that you've come to present to us and to show us how you're providing leadership in your school. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have one final delegation on this topic, and that's Dr. Barbara Schumacher. And welcome to the podium, and you can begin when you're ready. Yeah, just lift up the, yeah, there we go.
Right. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Shantz, councillors and staff. I'm here to support the update that we heard from our Climate Change and Sustainability Coordinator and to ask for Council's concentrated attention to the report. I ask Council for thoughtful recommendations in line with your Council vision for a sustainable future for Woolwich. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be pushing a button to move the slides. Is it? Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I should have asked for that at the beginning. So to begin, let's look at what science tells us. Scientific evidence supports 20 degrees Celsius as the optimal temperature for life on Earth. Temperature regulation mechanisms that ensure healthy bodily functions across our lifespan are understood and inform prevention and treatment plans for heat-related health risks. Climate scientists warn that global heating is baked into our future, the result of pollution by fossil fuels already burned since pre-industrial times. Our future depends on how much more we burn. On the left, projections for low emissions of greenhouse gases show the temperature increases at the top from 2031 to 2050 and at the bottom from 2081 to 2100. And on the right, we have a high emission projection with temperature increases for the same timeframes. The color scale reflects temperature increases from 1 degree Celsius in pale yellow to 11 degrees in deep red. The Paris Agreement to hold temperature increases to 1.5 degrees Celsius below pre-industrial levels is still recognized as necessary for a sustainable future. What we don't know is whether it is possible to sustain life at temperature increases in ranges above 4 degrees. 2024 is the first year to exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius for the year. Extreme weather events are happening worldwide. Global heating causing wildfires, together with changes in precipitation amounts and patterns and glacier melts, are escalating health risks. The climate crisis is destroying housing and risking food and water security. All aspects of life, our personal situation, our geography and governance, our health services and systems are impacted by climate crisis. Pollution results from fossil fuel combustion, which is the energy powering both our urban and rural civilization. Harm to health results from carbon pollution, which is greenhouse gases causing global heating and climate change, and air pollution, which is particulate matter and toxic gases. Heat-related illnesses, infections, respiratory and cardiovascular problems are not the only health impacts of climate change. Air pollution causes cancers, including lung, leukemia, and breast, pregnancy and newborn outcomes, neurological decline and developmental delays, endocrine dysfunction, and mental health risks. Health Canada estimates in 2018, air pollution was linked to 17,400 premature deaths. There were 3.6 million days with people suffering asthma symptoms and 39 million days for acute respiratory symptoms. The Canadian Medical Association map shows the health risks already experienced across Canada. Health risks resulting from severe weather, heat, sea level rise, air pollution, changing spread of infectious diseases and antibiotic resistance, water scarcity, and reduced food production. This demonstration of the predicted expanded range for the black-legged tick, which causes Lyme disease, is one of the health risks facing us here in Ontario. The mental health impacts of climate change, depression, addiction, and suicide disproportionately affect young people. 45% of youth report climate anxiety impacts their daily life. World Health Organization names climate change as the biggest risk to health and our survival. And 71% of Canadians say they want their next federal government to do more to address climate change, to adapt to its consequences, and to protect nature. Deaths and productivity losses due to heat will cost $10 billion per year by 2050. Air pollution, $114 billion. Add to that the cost of health impacts due to wildfires. Every dollar spent on cutting greenhouse gas saves $2 in healthcare costs. Every 1/10 of a degree of global heating that we are able to prevent by reducing greenhouse gases is critical to improve our health. Climate action will also limit the costs of extreme weather from floods, wind and ice storms and wildfires. Catastrophic insurance losses are escalating dramatically. How we take action to limit fossil fuel combustion and greenhouse gas pollution will determine the health and safety of our children and grandchildren. We need to help people clearly understand the risks climate change poses to the people, places, and things we love. What seeds will Woolwich plant today to take root and combat our future climate change? Thank you.
Well timed. Thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Schumacher? No. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and we'll look forward to our staff report in June and Claire, and Claira, you might want to, I think you have an inside track on our agenda, so you might want to watch or either come in when we have that presentation in June or watch it on the web. So thanks. Okay. Thank you. And I thank the Waterloo Region Police and the Region of Waterloo for your indulgence in letting us have that presentation first. And I will try to make sure that I don't skip anything on the agenda, but Jeff will help me with that. So next we'll move to presentations, and I'll call on the Waterloo Region Police Service to come and speak to us. Tonight we welcome Chief of Police Mark Kroll, Rural Policing Sergeant James Hauser, Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, and Manager of Government Relations David Mullock. So welcome everyone. Thanks for coming in. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Mayor Shantz, members of council, staff, and all those watching and attending tonight. It's an honor to be here on behalf of our police service. Very proud to serve this community and to join you again to share an update in terms of our policing commitments to Woolwich Township and also an overview of police practices throughout the region. I need some assistance here to move it. There we go. So currently our authorized strength is about 866 sworn officers and 480 civilian professionals serving one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. And we're driven by our mission to ensure that every citizen and person in a region is safe and feels safe. And in doing so, last year we attended over 346,000 calls for service. Those comprise 911 calls, non-emergency calls, some of our proactive generated calls, and online reporting as well. And about 8,000 of those were in Woolwich Township. And to provide you a breakdown of some of that, I'll move forward first. But to start 2025, we really wanted to reinforce our commitment to township policing. And the strategy we've developed is focused on three key priorities, namely community engagement, our visibility, our participation, and our commitments to knowing and serving the residents of our rural townships. With us tonight is Sergeant Jay Heiser, our newest rural patrol sergeant serving the rural communities across the region. And he's certainly making his way to be known and available throughout the townships and Woolwich in particular. And we're also looking to establish a commitment in terms of a community space in Woolwich as well. This community will recall the substation that we enjoyed in Elmira for some years, and we're looking to ensure that we have a footprint and a location where people can join us, meet us, and to listen and share of policing needs in this community. So that is still to be established, but is a commitment for 2025. Our other commitments relate to crime suppression and road safety, and joined tonight as well is Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, who leads our traffic safety unit. And I'll work through some of the data for you. So when we look at our top calls in Woolwich Township, about 40% of the citizen-generated calls relate to traffic in total. So vehicle stops, motor vehicle collision, some of our selective traffic enforcement program work and proactive initiatives make up a bulk of our work in terms of visibility and response to traffic-related concerns and emergencies and so on. And the rest of our calls for service really follow the same outlay that we see throughout the region of Waterloo. When we look at our traffic safety commitments, we recognize that a lot of our fatal collisions and serious injury collisions do happen in our rural roadways. So we are focused on what we call the fatal 4 offenses, so impaired driving, distracted driving, speeding and aggressive driving, and seatbelt use. So displayed for you tonight is to show you our enforcement efforts for 2024. A lot of it relates to speed on the roadways. And we work with our municipal partners and the region on the Safe Roadways program to ensure that we're where we need to be at the highest priority, driven by evidence, driven by complaints and requests, and also looking to complement the automated speed enforcement program that is laying itself out over the next couple of years. So always a work in progress. We know there are more traffic needs and requests than we can attend to every day, but we're striving to meet those at the highest priority. To give you a sense of the total lay of the land in terms of violent crime throughout the region in 2024, we saw a continued trend of 22 shootings throughout Waterloo region. That is a 3-year trend that has been stable for the past number of years. We've had an average of 21 shootings per year for 3 years straight. Our homicide rate is 4 of the 5 homicides last year involved firearms. One trend development in 2024 related to carjackings, so the violent robbery of vehicles or attempted robbery as people enter or approach their vehicles. And that's tied to the total number of stolen vehicle thefts that we've seen across Canada, but certainly throughout Southern Ontario and the Greater Toronto Area, including our region. So we've seen over 1,000 stolen vehicles and an uptick in stolen vehicle activity in the past number of years. A lot of it is linked to organized crime activity throughout the globe, but has impacts across Canada. And reprogramming thefts and warm-up thefts are of great concern to us. We've seen in the past number of years about 250 to 300 robberies. So we're very focused on it's almost a dichotomy of person-on-person robberies and also commercial establishment robberies as well. So you'll be familiar with some of the high-profile ones that have occurred throughout the region, especially in commercial establishments such as jewelry stores, pharmacies, and so on. All of this leads us to something that's been building for a couple years, and it's something we've adopted through an evidence-based lens called stratified policing. And it's really a crime suppression approach and a framework that we've adopted that's been very successful in some municipalities. We're the first Canadian Police Service to adopt a crime suppression model such as this that is really hyper-focused on prolific offenders, prolific offenses, locations of concern, and using data to drive our activity. It's really about essential police work that is coordinating intelligence, coordinating information sharing, and really taking a concerted team approach to the highest community needs and to ensure that we are very focused on passing the torch of information sharing around the clock. Rather than just taking calls, we're investigating at every stage and using data at its highest order. Displayed for you is a bit of a remodel for what our urban divisions now look like. We've decentralized some of our teams to bring a direct action response team, a community youth engagement team, and also a street crime team to each of our urban divisions. But I do want to reinforce to this council and the public that this network of support is extended to our rural townships. It starts the day within the urban divisions, but then is branching out to the rural needs, however required. And part of Sergeant Heiser's role is to ensure that we are coordinating our teams on a proactive, preventative, and also responsive basis. We're also supported by all of the regional teams that continue to exist, working on projects, working on response and preventative measures as well. So displayed for you tonight are the myriad of intelligence services teams, criminal investigations teams, and operational support teams. So happy to provide any insight into the work of many of these investigative and response teams, but just want to give the public a sense of how many needs are attended to across the community 24/7, 365. Also want to reinforce our commitment to evidence-based practices looking at prevention in the long term. So we are very committed as a police service working with our community partners to the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Displayed for you are the top priority identified in our community. So addressing intimate partner violence and gender-based violence, combating hate, addressing mental health and addiction needs together, and creating safe and inclusive spaces. There are many commitments and actions under each of these priorities, and we maintain a leading and a partnership role in these programs and initiatives as well. And in closing, I just want to also give you a snapshot of our commitment to continuous improvement and leveraging technology to combat the work that we face every day. So we are part of a movement of digital evidence management, evolution, and innovation. Everything is becoming digitized within the criminal justice system, and that impacts the work that we do, from evidence capture to the forensic work that we do into the disclosure to courts. We are in the planning and designing stage of a modern public safety communications center that, as was spoken to earlier, from an infrastructure standpoint, looking at emergency management, coordination and integration of technology into the future with the advancement of next generation 911 technology will be integral for our successful future. And to give you a snapshot of some of the deployment of technology that we have, every one of our frontline officers has body-worn camera technology. Every cruiser that you see in the community has in-car camera and automated license plate reader technology. And we will be deploying expansion to what we call the Remotely Piloted Aerial System Program, otherwise known as drone technology, to assist us in searches for missing persons, looking at scene reconstruction and other advantages such as that as we deploy to a number of emergencies throughout the region. We're also looking to build and to connect different camera system technology with the municipally accessible cameras, commercially available cameras as well, and also private citizens as we start to create a network of real-time access and also after the fact access for advancing our investigations. We're in a new world when it comes to much of our activity now being in the online sphere, and we're needing to adapt and also leverage at its infancy the artificial intelligence capabilities and automation. So that is a high-level overview of policing in Waterloo Region in 2025. And as much as I've talked about programs and technology and innovation and advancement, so much of what we do is people meeting people where they are and needing to serve all of our communities in a genuine and authentic way. And it's a privilege to join you tonight. Great presentations leading before mine, but happy to take any questions, comments, or concerns that you might have during this forum or after the fact as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Curl. Questions? Councillor Cadeau and then Councillor Burgess.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to the Chief. I'm interested in the crime suppression model. Do you report publicly on what the problem areas are?
We do. So we're just starting to roll that out right now. The modeling of the commitments is just starting to come on board. We want to share as much as possible. There's a balance to not wanting to stigmatize certain communities, and but at the same time meeting the needs of our community. So look forward to providing access and sharing some of that to your interest and broadly. I can tell you some of the crime bulletins and the networking that we're starting to build out is at its early stage, but we look forward to sharing that with as much transparency as possible.
Yeah. As a follow-up, appreciate that. Couple of thoughts that go through my mind when I was listening to your presentation there. First, are you worried about like a self-fulfilling prophecy whereby you're dedicating more resources to these areas, therefore you're going to uncover more crime, which justifies putting more resources to those areas?
It's certainly a balance of concern and perspective. We're trying to let data drive our work and also just be responsive to the number of calls for service demands that exist today, the number of complaints. But a lot of this is driven on offender activity and management. And anecdotally for years we have seen that a small number of people are driving a high level of criminal activity, having huge impacts on neighborhoods, homes, neighborhoods, and broader communities. And so through some of our early efforts, we're starting to see significant changes in neighborhood behavior based on our focused efforts on certain people and certain behaviors, looking at the highest level of victimization, violence, and looking to move to that preventative space. So it's still early on. What we've learned from other communities is it's been a multi-year journey to build out the systems to create the behavior and the predictability with how all the teams function together. But we're optimistic, having just started this within a few months. Yeah.
Just one last thing, and based on some of my knowledge, problem areas tend to migrate more to downtown cores, the central business district and the area immediately surrounding that. If those are the problem areas, we're going to see a lot more resources dedicated to policing the cities. So are the townships going to be subsidizing this dedicated policing to the cities?
And that's the part of wanting to be here tonight and to share our commitment to our rural townships, the strategy that we've laid out. Data will drive some of that behavior, but we're seeing that criminal activity is very fluid, that there are crimes of opportunities, that our visibility, even within, say, the urban core of Waterloo region, is driving activity, to our rural townships. So break and enters, vehicle thefts, no corner of this region is immune. So we don't want to be chasing analysis. We want to be responsive, visible, and it's a mix of using that crime enforcement perspective, but also the classic community policing building. That's so important, building those essential partnerships. So it all fits together, but we want to reinforce our commitment to serving our townships with the same level of support that is required everywhere across the region.
Councillor Burgess.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Shantz, through you to the chief. First, I just want to thank all you guys for your service to the region. It's much appreciated. Also want to say thanks for coming out tonight and presenting to us. It's nice to see the number of calls are going down in Woolwich from last year, so nice work on that. As kind of been touched on by both of you here, we're more of a rural region here, and we lost the office many years ago now. So I'm just wondering about, people are worried about less police presence or responsiveness. So would you have any data on like response times and how that's kind of been going year over year compared to the cities in that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we do report regularly to our police service board on the response time data, and we've been relatively stable for the past 5 years. Happy to share that as a supplement to council to show the consistency. There's always some ebbs and flows year to year, but that's a key indicator of everything, is our response time to our rural calls for service and our urban calls for service. And I'm happy to say that under the new Police Service Act, there's a new Inspectorate of Policing, which is a new governance and accountability capacity from the province. And one of their top priorities is looking at response times, looking to ensure that communities are receiving adequate and effective policing services. And Waterloo Region was selected of just a number of services across Ontario to pilot sort of the data sharing and the scrutiny that every community deserves to ensure that every citizen across Ontario is receiving adequate and effective policing. So happy to share that after the fact, but to the earlier question, we want to reinforce the consistent improvement on our level of service, and response times is a key indicator of that.
Thanks for that response. And yeah, I'd like to see that data if you don't mind sharing it. Just one follow-up. The one slide there, you have 1 sergeant and 5 constables assigned to community and youth engagement. I was just wondering if you could give some examples that they are doing in the community or possibly in Woolwich, because I know upstream crime prevention is an important factor in all this.
So it's a sort of an enhanced mandate. Since the loss of the school resource officer program, our commitment to serving youth has not changed. But we've really tried to reinforce those are the teams that are dealing with some of the chronic neighborhood issues. So it could be an individual, could be a consistent issue related to mental health, addictions, encampments, community problem solving, where there's a cluster of calls for service. So that would exist in this township, in the same as our urban centers as well. The youth engagement component to that too relates to our partnerships with school systems, partner agencies to look at at-risk youth, which is shared right across the community as well. So part of our rural sergeant's position is to be connected to community representatives such as yourselves to understand those pressing needs, and then those officers would be deployed to help troubleshoot, strategize, and create in deployment models, to try and solve issues, drive down concerns, bring in resources. And so that's the capacity that exists. And I think Sergeant Heiser will be able to give you some examples of some early successes that he's seen in our previous role as well, would be dealing with some of those, as I mentioned, encampment issues, chronic mental health and addiction issues that drive those repeated calls for service. Yeah.
Councillor Grant and then Councillor Schwint.
Thank you. I wouldn't to get into some of the specifics of your statistics here, just because of general interest. Ward 3 sees a number of vehicle thefts, Breslau in particular. It's not unusual to see almost a weekly post in their Facebook groups about someone either having a car stolen or a car rummaged through. I'm just wondering if you can give us an idea of whether or not we're seeing an increase in vehicle thefts in the region, or if there's a decrease. I know that Equite just came out with their kind of 2024 trend report saying that Ontario in a whole has had a decrease in thefts, but I'm wondering if we're seeing that within the region.
So from 2023 to 2024, there was an increase, almost a 200 additional vehicle thefts in Waterloo region. The total number within Canada and Ontario was actually trending down within the last 2 years. And so there's been a concentrated efforts on, shared enforcement and intelligence capacity within the GTA. And I think some of that activity is actually being pushed outside of the GTA proper into regions such as ours. Even looking at the helicopter program investment, the air support program, that's serving, the core GTA services. There's some of us within Niagara, Hamilton, Waterloo region, and then now even into London that are seeing not only vehicle thefts, but also some of the robbery activity translate here. So it's something that's one of our highest priorities. And as I mentioned, not only just the vehicle thefts themselves tied to reprogramming, organized crime and so on, but as I mentioned, the carjacking activity as well. There's an adaptation by these organized crime groups in terms of the methods. Yeah. And so we're trying to develop the best strategies possible, and we're working with police services across Southern Ontario all the time to understand
the 1,193 of vehicle investigations, and then some of these are obviously organized crime and attempted. Could you just touch on those a little bit, what the difference is?
Yeah, so the 1,193 is the total number of motor vehicles stolen overall. The 163, it says organized crime vehicle thefts, relates to the reprogramming technology, where they're actively stealing, whether it's through the key fob transmissions, or they're, once they get into the vehicle, actively engaging into the computer system and stealing it that way. And then there's 53 attempted organized crime vehicle thefts. So when we do successfully intervene, make arrests, and get into to understand what's occurred, it's very clear that these are organized crime groups. They may exist here locally, but they may be coming from outside of the region looking for crimes of opportunity. And we've seen that oftentimes they're scoping out neighborhoods, and then they'll have a cluster of thefts that occur often overnight. And so we've tried to inform the community as much as possible about, as you mentioned, Equite Canada has identified certain vehicles at risk, and also crime prevention efforts that every one of us may have an opportunity to, to enhance or lessen that concern. Yeah.
Thank you. And then that brings me to the next question you fed in well, which was I wanted to ask, what are some things that residents can do to help reduce vehicle theft? And then in turn, what is it that the region is doing, or the even other police forces like the OPP are doing to kind of help address this issue?
So we've seen some good investments, even the development of a ministry of auto theft and bail crime compliance, bring some of those coordinated resources, so additional policing resources. So I would say that we're operating as best as we ever have to share intelligence, to work on joint force initiatives, across jurisdictions. When it comes to individual homes, residences, businesses, and citizens, on our website, we provide a list of sort of crime prevention efforts to, however possible, fortify you know, the security of vehicles, if there's any way to, you know, to reinforce, you know, we call it crime prevention through environmental design, whether it's lighting, whether it's home security, whether it's blocking in vehicles, some aftermarket security measures within vehicles, tracking technology. We often find that if there's a deterrence factor up front, people will move on to another opportunity. And happy to share that resource as well with council to share with citizens and residents. Yeah.
Councillor Schwinn.
Thanks, Mayor. Also echo other councillors. Thank you for being here tonight. Appreciating seeing people from the forest up in Township. One part that got my attention in your presentation was real-time operational centers and new innovation and camera networks. As a layperson walking downtown Elmira, do I have to say Big Brother's watching me, or can you expand on what that program looks like?
Yeah, so nothing is initiated yet. And I'll start from saying that I believe that as a society, we're playing catch up to where many of our citizens already are. When we're doing our investigations, many citizens are already deploying door cams, dash cams. Businesses have camera networks protecting themselves. So as one region, we have not moved ahead with coordination of municipal, regional cameras that are accessible by the police. But we're looking to leverage those opportunities moving forward. So we have recently secured some funds that are matched in our budget to start to build some police deployed cameras, but we have not yet deployed any of our own throughout the region. And the essence of rolling anything like that out is to do it with full community consultation, full alliance with privacy expectations, and to actually do it in the full transparency of community consent, to ensure that people know that a camera may exist in a certain area, and to put it front and center for people to understand exactly what the retention, the capability, the access, and what the purpose of it is. So to answer your question plainly, there's no Big Brother watching to this point, but we will be seeking to try to create partnerships and to meet the expectations of solving crime and hopefully preventing it as well. And so we're seeing that some networks that would allow them to leverage, you know, some of these access points, but it has to be done in the full transparency and consent of every community.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out, as everyone has said. We'll just keep it going. I have a question about driving. I've noticed that the distracted driving is up 30% and the dangerous driving is up 42%. Is that only in the townships, or is this region wide? And what do we do about something like this?
So the data that's showing there is just for Woolwich Township. So Staff Sergeant Griffiths is here. I don't know if you have any bright answers to provide that I can. He often does. But what I can say is it's one of the biggest concerns that we have, just society in general. People are distracted by cell phone technology, you know, in their car. We are seeking to provide as much visibility, education, enforcement to minimize the concerns that exist. But oftentimes we're seeing a combination of bad driving behaviors, so excessive speeds, distraction, and people simply, you know, not abiding by many of the concerns. So it's when we succinctly say the fatal 4 offenses are of our highest priorities, it's because they're leading to the worst outcomes, those types of behaviors. So I can say our traffic services unit, in combination with the officers that would be serving this community in their regular detail, the majority of their work is focused on traffic enforcement, visibility, and so on. So I don't have the magic wand to improve behavior, but I can say we're trying to leverage all that we can. Yeah.
And so further to that, are the other townships experiencing the same issue with the dangerous driving and distracted driving, or is it strictly townships and not a city issue?
So what I can say is there's nothing special in terms of the concerns in this community that are different than, say, the other 3 townships. And what we've seen year over year, though, is when we look at serious injury collisions and our fatal collisions, I think it's around 60% a year are occurring on rural roadways. And it simply, I think, has to do with long stretches of road where people have increased speed, and some of the bends and winds in our roadways, lead to those danger points. We focus all of our efforts from, as I mentioned, looking at whenever we analyze the collisions that occur, minor and major. We use complaints to drive our activity from a proactive basis. And we're trying to partner as much as we can with municipal initiatives, traffic and road safety calming measures. I mentioned the automated speed enforcement. It's not without controversy, but I can tell you it is a supplement to the demand for us to do better as a community. And I think over the next couple of years, we'll see some of those advantages of hopefully some better compliance and just better behavior overall, where people realize the high levels of danger. There's no doubt that for traffic alone, there's more requests for our presence and enforcement than we can attend to. For all the time, for the decades that I've been a police officer, every single year, it's the highest community concern in every municipality in our region is traffic safety. So we're leveraging as much activity as we can, but we do rely on our municipal partnerships as well to assist in all those things I mentioned.
Thank you.
Anything else? Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, one final question. I almost let it go, but I just couldn't. No, it's not a bad thing. Your final bullet, use of artificial intelligence for recognition and automation. Can you unpack that just a little bit for us?
So similar to the other question about camera technology, we are not, we are at the infancy of understanding what our artificial intelligence might provide us in terms of solutions. So there's a very limited basis for artificial intelligence that we're deploying right now through some of our transcription technology. That's the early stage right now. What we're adapting to is the inverse, is actually responding to new types of crime or new trends in crime, where cyber crime in general is one of the highest concern points for us in terms of new types of victimization. So we are putting together, we have assembled an artificial intelligence working group. We're looking to set up a governance model. We're looking to bring in some community expertise that will help us to develop a framework that is transparent, that is respecting, all privacy concerns. Whenever we deploy any technology, we do privacy impact assessments. Those are in total compliance with provincial and national, privacy legislation and expectations. And we want to make all that publicly accessible. There are some emerging technologies, and I'll give you some examples, is when you have a cluster of, say, video feeds coming in from a number of different sources, and you're looking to identify items, people, objects within, many hours of video feeds, there are some programs that can assist with the automated analysis of that. Child sexual exploitation images. So looking to use automation to do some of the sorting, analysis, and output for terabytes of seizures of data and so on. Those are some examples where we're looking to leverage technology in the plain light of day so people understand what we're doing. There will be future conversations within Canada about facial recognition and how that may be assistive as a tool, but there's major cautions on how that might be deployed within the Canadian landscape right now. So early days on police use of artificial intelligence, but we're playing catch up from a global perspective on how it's impacting our citizens from a crime perspective.
Anyone else? Mr. Brown?
Yeah, just more of a comment to council and even for the public is, I know coming here in 2007, that was a time where we still had a detachment in Elmira. And there was a lot of concern at the time when the detachment eventually closed. But I know the commitment from the chief at the time and the police over time has been, it's more important about making sure we have boots on the ground and the bricks and mortar. You know, and I think it's important for everyone to know is that, and be aware that over the last 18 years, what I've seen in terms of an evolution is a conscious effort to make sure that we have contact and regular touch points. I would say though, over the last 3 to 4 years, it's been unprecedented. And that's been a great thing. Not only in terms of having regular touch points on you know, the ability to have touch point with the police on current issues and concerns that can be easily brought forward, but also to having touch points for staff here, whether it be corporate services or infrastructure services with respect to bylaw enforcement issues, homelessness issues, speeding, and collaborating with respect to targeted areas. But also importantly is the regular touch points have improved one very other important thing, and that is we still have the unique circumstances where, because of our size and geography and the growth that's happening in Breslau, being serviced by 2 divisions, the level of contact and collaboration ensures that, you know, we're able to properly make sure that touch points happen and the right people know whether the issue is in part of the township serviced by 1 division, part by central. And, you know, those are the things I think in practical terms that are good for council to be aware, but especially the public. You know, so as I said, I know there was lots of concerns, you know, with the bricks and mortar closing. But as the presentation noted too, we've been in discussions about can we offer some community space, et cetera. But I really want to emphasize that in the last 3 to 4 years, it's been unprecedented in terms of level of contact and collaboration. And that's, you know, better for the same people that we all serve in terms of the residents and businesses of the township.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else before we let the chief go? Thank you very much for being here. I'm sure we could probably find questions to fill another hour, but we'll have you back another time.
Wonderful, anytime.
Do it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to the Region of Waterloo 2025 Transportation Capital Program. I'll welcome Sharon Daniel, Supervisor of Transportation Program Planning for the region. Welcome. You should be able to lower the seat and just press the button in front of you in the middle. Yep, perfect.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, thank you so much for inviting the Region of Waterloo to come and present the Regional Council approved 2025 Transportation Capital Program, which we also call the TCP. We will be focusing on the projects that are within the Township of Woolwich. The purpose of this presentation is to give you a high-level overview on how we develop the regional TCP, what our budget process is like, the recent construction accomplishments that were accomplished in Woolwich in 2024, and we will go over construction projects that are currently scheduled within Woolwich over the next 5 years, so between 2025 and 2029. We will end with any questions that you have, but please note any project-specific questions that you might have. We can note them down and ask the project manager to follow up with you on them. So when we build our Regional Transportation Capital Program, the TCP, we have to prioritize between many different projects. And the regional staff have to take the following points into consideration. We look at the pavement and bridge conditions. So every year we have infrastructure and operational staff that go out and inspect regional roads and bridges, review the data collected, and determine pavement conditions for the road and structural conditions for the bridges. Currently, the region is also undertaking a significant asset management plan where levels of service will be balanced with objectives of affordability for residents. And I see that you have also an asset management plan update coming up, so we're also working on one. The other thing we have to consider when we look at roads is we look at it from a safety aspect. We have roads where maybe we have a lot of collisions, as you heard from the police chief, where we have accidents taking place, or you might have actual collisions or near misses. They could happen mid-block or they could happen at intersections. So when we look at projects and whether we should go ahead and do them, we have to take all those things into consideration also. So it's not just, is the pavement good? We also have to look at, are there collisions happening or are there near misses? So it comes down to safety of the people. We also have to look at roads where the underground water mains might be having a lot of breaks, or storm sewers that are under capacity. So as you mentioned earlier, you might be getting a lot of flooding issues. So we have to look at safety not only from an accident perspective, but also from an underground perspective. And so upsizing these storm sewers or repairing water mains quickly can affect the safety of the residents and their homes also. Another thing that we look at is we look at input and coordination between our regional departments. So we have internal departments like water services, our storm group, design and construction, legal, our development groups. We have to coordinate with them what their needs and concerns are and try to integrate it into our program. And another thing that we work with is our area municipalities. So we have 7 area municipalities, of which Woolwich is one. So we talk to each of our area municipalities. We have meetings with them every year to determine what are your concerns and your priorities that we have to take into consideration. Another thing that we look at is traffic management. So when we look at prioritization of projects, we have to consider, do we build Road A or do we build Road B? But if Road B is supposed to be a detour for Road A, we obviously can't build Road B in the time that we think. We have to go ahead with Road A sometimes. Or if there's an area municipality project that's going ahead, we cannot maybe build at the same time as them. So we have to look at the timing and defer the project so that an area municipality or a different road can be built at that time. The other thing that we look at is called the Integrated Mobility Plan. It used to be called the Transportation Master Plan, and it's getting renamed the Integrated Mobility Plan. 2 of the core values that the Regional Strategic Plan has is equitable services and opportunities and climate-aligned growth, which means that we're looking at alternative means of transportation for residents so that they have options of taking the bus, safer spaces to cycle and scooter, sidewalks so people can walk, etc. So having these alternative modes can also help with reducing traffic volume, which also helps with the carbon dioxide emissions that everyone's trying to reach across Ontario and across Canada. The other consideration we have to look at is capacity considerations, so which is also related to the next point, which is development-related projects. One of the other core values that we have is homes for all, and we know that more and more housing is getting built to accommodate for more people within Ontario and within the region. So when we have development happening upstream, we have to look at our roads and say, can this road take the capacity that this upstream development is now having? So sometimes if we only have 1 lane in each direction, maybe that's not enough capacity for cars or bikes or a bus transit. So we might have to expand the roads to help with more movement of people and goods. And sometimes we also have to look at it from a road diet perspective. Maybe there's too much traffic. And so we might have to move some of those people from cars to an alternative method of traveling, which is more public transit and bikes or scooters or walking. So there's a lot of pieces to consider, and there's no magic wand to make things take place. In terms of constraints, we have budget, which I know is everyone's concern. So the first thing with the budget is that we have over 400 projects that are in our capital program that's spread over 7 area municipalities. And each year we're given a financial envelope within which we have to try and fit in as many projects as we can. The region in general does not like to do any debt financing, as there's a huge cost associated with that, and that impacts the taxpayers. So we try to work within the actual budget that we have. We also have to work with coordinating with utility companies like Hydro, Gas, Bell, Rogers, etc. So we ask our utility companies to go a year ahead of us so they can move all their undergrounds before we come in to do our work. And sometimes if there's a delay due to them being able to get to a road, then that impacts the timing of our project also and delays the start of our project. In terms of land acquisition, sometimes when we have to build bike lanes or we have to do a road expansion, we have to buy land. And in order to buy land, that involves a lot of negotiation and collaboration with landowners. And if that doesn't go according to schedule, because again, you're dealing with so many people, that can impact the start of a project also. And like I mentioned earlier, we do have traffic management. So sometimes if you have these projects planned, but something comes up with one project and that gets delayed, it can cause a ripple effect to other projects that we have. So if this was supposed to be a detour for one and this one gets delayed, then we can't go ahead with plan A either. And sometimes that's not only from above ground, but that also is from an underground perspective. Because of the way drainage works, you have to build the last section first before you can go upstream. In terms of our 2024 construction accomplishments in the Township of Woolwich, pardon me. Next slide, please. We built the Sawmill Road from River Street to Snyder Flats Road. This was a full reconstruction project. And it was done in the village of Bloomingdale. It was in conjunction with the installation of a northbound and southbound left turn lanes. And we put in new traffic signals at St. Charles Street. It also included the installation of storm sewers. And it also included and was in conjunction with the township's urbanization of 400 meters of Snyder's Flat Road, sorry. In terms of the 2025 to 2029 planned construction of projects within the Township of Woolwich, this will provide you with an overview map of where all these projects are. We focused within these 5 years because anything that's beyond that is subject to change just because of uncertainty and a higher level of risk that comes in with where our funds are, what's going to take place. So we just focus on the next 5 years. The first project we'll talk about is Shawns Station Road, which is the CNR track bridge to Hopewell Creek Bridge. That project is going to take place in 2025, which is this year. It's a rural resurfacing project, and it's going to be about a budget of $1 million. The next project we have is Sawmills Road from Snyder Flats Road to Crow's Foot and St. Catharines Street South. That project is in 2026. It's a rural resurfacing project, and it's about $2.2 million. Sorry. Then we have Arthur Street South from South Street to Kenning Place, which is currently scheduled for reconstruction between 2027 and 2029. So that's about 3 years of construction. It includes the Township of Woolwich's sanitary sewer and water main replacement. It's in conjunction with the rehab of the bridge at Canagajig Creek. We're going to be having some coordination with the township pump station and force main upgrades. It potentially includes separated cycling facilities on both sides of the road from South Street East to the bridge, and it includes a multi-use trail on both sides of the road from Kissing Bridge Trail to Kenning Place, and sidewalks on both sides of the street. And it's a full reconstruction project, and that's about $10.2 million. Then we have Maryhill Road, which is 70 meters east of Notre Dame Avenue to Charles Street West. It's in 2027. It's also a full reconstruction project, $3.8 million. It includes sidewalk and cycling facilities on both sides of the road, region and township Woolwich storm sewer replacement, and a consideration of extending the municipal water servicing by the Township of Woolwich. Sorry. We have line 86, Northfield Drive East to Spruce Lane, which is happening in 2028, currently scheduled for 2028. It's a rural resurfacing project, and it's about $2.6 million. Then we have Maryhill Road from Waterloo, Wellington boundary to Bridge 2501. It's a rural resurfacing project and will include cycling on both sides of the road. It's in conjunction with the road bridge rehab at Hopewell Creek, and it's a rural resurfacing at $740,000. Then we have Arthur Street North from Kenning Place to Sandy Hills Drive. It's in 2029. It's a rural resurfacing project. It will include the Township of Woolwich's water main and sanitary sewer repairs, and potentially cycling on both sides of the road. And that project is about $4 million. We have line 86, Catherine Street North to Northfield Drive East. It's in 2029. It's a rural resurfacing project. There's going to be potentially be cycling facilities between Catherine Street North and Middlebrook Road. It's in conjunction with the rehabilitation and bridge repairs of two bridge structures, and the project's about $2.9 million. Then we have Hawksville Road, which is from Three Bridges Road to Ament Line or Cressler Road. It's happening in 2029. It's a rural resurfacing project, and it's about $2.2 million. We have Lobsinger Line from Martins Creek Road to Heidelberg Cemetery. It's a rural resurfacing project that'll include cycling on both sides of the roadway, and it's about $2.4 million. That's our road reconstruction projects. Then we'll talk about some of the bridges. We have the very famous West Montrose Bridge rehab that's going to be taking place in 2025, so starting this year and going into 2025 to 2026. It's undergoing a full rehabilitation, and the old steel Bailey trusses will be removed, and the budget for that project is $7.4 million. We have our Northfield Drive Shifley Bridge at the Conestoga River. That project is scheduled to start this year and will be over 2 years. And it's a replacement of a 107-meter long superstructure. And the budget for that project is $24 million. And one of the third bridge that we have is the Arthur Street Bridge at Canagajig Creek. This is a 30-meter long bridge, and it's in conjunction with the resurfacing project that I spoke of earlier, Arthur Street from South Street to Kenning Place. And the replacement of this bridge is $4.5 million, and it's to take place currently at 2027. In terms of intersection improvements, we have two of them, which are proposed roundabouts. We have Sawmill Road at Catherine Street in 2028, and it's $3.4 million. And then we have another proposed roundabout at EB Crescent, also in 2028, at $3.8 million. And this just shows you a summary of our resurfacing and reconstruction projects. In total, over the coming 5 years, we have about 25 kilometers of road either getting resurfaced and reconstructed within the Township of Woolwich at a budget of about $32 million. And for our bridges and intersection works, we have 3 bridges and 2 potential roundabouts, and the total budget for that is about $43 million. And at this time, I'm happy to take any questions. But again, if If they are very project specific related, I'm happy to note those questions down and take it back to our project managers to contact you directly.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go with David first and then Jared and then I'm not sure. We'll just go around.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I did just want to probably reiterate or echo something that region staff had noted. I had an opportunity to connect with the acting regional CAO last evening in advance of this presentation. And one of the things that, again, has been raised here today is to underscore that the realities of where the region's at, similar to us, is certainly you saw tonight where they're building the capital program for the next number of years. At the same time, they'll also be balancing this with their asset management work. And so the timing of things, and projects, et cetera, may be impacted on that. So one of the things we also did commit to, though, is if there is any, major changes, once that asset management work, to look at a future whereby our staff work with regional staff on some sort of joint presentation to show how some of the capital programs interrelate and work together. And we're going to work towards that end as well. And Jared and I have talked about that as well. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, and I just think I would further add, so thank you for presenting. It's important too, like if you look at the investment that the region is intending to do, we're talking about $75 million potentially in the next 5 years, and appreciate the caveat that that Mr. Brenneman just mentioned, but that's a significant investment. And one thing that council and the public need to understand is there is always an efficiency and an economy of scale. If the region is undertaking any large reconstruction project where we have underground infrastructure such as water or sanitary, there is a cost benefit to collaborate and work together. And I just want to make that comment that is what the relationship is generally all about, is that collaboration on large investments. We understand there is one taxpayer, and we need to coordinate detours, we need to coordinate large reconstruction projects. And I just wanted to reiterate that is what typically happens, but that is not an insignificant amount of money that the region is looking to invest, and rightfully so, in the Township of Woolwich with the the length in kilometers of regional corridors and bridges that they have here in the township.
Thank you. Sure, we'll start there and just go around. Bonnie, Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Actually, I have two questions for you. One, the Maryhill Road reconstruction from St. Charles down to Notre Dame, will there be land expropriation with that one? Because you mentioned adding sidewalks and bicycle lanes, and I don't think it can accommodate it with the existing road width. Can't even talk tonight. So will we be expropriating land from those properties? Do you know that, or?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I do not know that answer because the project managers are the ones that are involved more with land expropriation. So I can definitely take that question down, contact the project manager and ask them to contact you directly and let you know. One of the things that we do look at is, can we build something within an existing right-of-way? We try as much as we can to fit what we can. And if we can't, then we have to balance between land appropriation and what is the benefit to us. So in terms of this specific project, I can definitely ask someone to contact you.
Thank you. And then my next question relates to the two roundabouts you're talking about. Sorry, I'm going to put this over here so you can hear me better. The one at EB Crest and the one at Catherine Street. Are we going to be doing those at the same time? And the reason I ask is you have the village of Bloomingdale basically that sits in the middle of this. The only way they can get to Kitchener or Waterloo is by one of those two routes. So if you're doing both at the same time, you're really going to impact how that village is able to access Kitchener, Waterloo, a good part of the region. And that, I think, will be a major concern for residents. And the same thing for people coming out of Maryhill, if they want to go those routes, they're going to run into the same obstacles. So I would suggest if you could do one and then do the other, but don't do them both at the same time.
Okay, thank you very much for your suggestion. We will work with Jared and his team to look at all the detouring and how, if it impacts any of their projects also, because we don't want to cause delays within Woolwich projects. And so we will definitely coordinate.
Thank you.
Just to follow up, through you, Mayor Shantz, to to Councillor Bryant is that it's our understanding too, in discussion with the project manager, so this would be more current information, that EB Crest, that Sawmill is the roundabout that they're looking to proceed with. I think there's still further discussions about the Sawmill Road and Crowsfoot intersection. Generally speaking, township staff feel that that is functioning fairly efficiently with the signalization there. And we understand that would have significant costs as well when you look at the lay of the land there and the grading that would have to happen. So I think those are some of the discussions that we're aware of.
Evan. Councillor Burgess. Sorry.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. I'll just ask one or two here. I don't want to hold up the chain going. Firstly, for line 86, you talked about looking at alternate modes of transportation on projects you're doing. Would there be consideration for doing like a paved shoulder or something for biking? It's one of the main ways in Twilmire, and a lot of the Mennonites are always biking in there. And right now it's not safe because it's the gravel shoulder and they're basically just biking on a main road that guys are doing between 80 and 100 on. Is that a consideration at this point?
So when it comes to some of the rural roads, we are working with the Mennonite community to see where they are using the roads the most. So once we have an understanding of where do they bike the most, where are their buggies going, then we can figure out, do we put these paved shoulders in or not? So paved shoulders are good for cyclists, but sometimes what I've heard is they're not always the best for buggies. So there is some balance that we need to take place, and definitely we do consider paved shoulders for safety of cyclists.
Thank you. And then next question for Arthur Street, the reconstruction there, you have 27 to 29. Is that going to be a 3-year construction project, or is it just it's in the range, one of those years? Like, is it going to be like Church Street where it was done over 2 or 3 years in multiple chunks?
I could probably address that. Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, Councillor Burgess, that is going to be a multi-year project, no question, from south to Kenning. It's quite a stretch. There's a number of pieces going on. So it remains to be seen exactly if it's going to be a 2 or 3, but it will definitely be a multi-year project when it starts.
Okay. And I guess just touching on that, based on what Councillor Bryan said, if we're doing line 86 and Arthur Street there, you're kind of cutting out 2 main roads there at the main intersection of town going in and out. So I don't know if it's worth looking at doing those staggered years or not, but I'll leave that with the experts.
We've been waiting on Arthur Street for quite a long time. Councillor Cadeau.
Speaking of, through you, Mayor, thanks for your presentation, and I appreciate that you can't respond to individual projects, but I mean, I'd be remiss to not bring up Arthur Street. Specifically, I sent an email to the project manager and a number of regional officials on April 2nd, and I still haven't heard back. Now, from a customer service perspective, is it common practice to have to wait so long for a response from consultants or regional staff related to significant projects in the townships?
You are asking me if regional staff are responding in time, and to be honest, I'll just contact the project manager and tell them this is high priority and to get back to you.
That'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry.
Councillor Schwint.
Okay, I guess I'm going to speak up now. I'm going to sound kind of grumpy towards the region because that's what I'm hearing from my constituents, and that's my role, I think, tonight. So I need to ask, how's staff, I guess, understanding local needs and getting input? Are we talking to local staff, local businesses, local residents? And the example I'm going to use is 86 bypass, Elmira bypass between St. Jacobs and Elmira. Consultation started before I was born. We had another one in January. So to me, I'm starting to think that if the consultation doesn't give the answer that's wanted, we put off the project, defer. And that's not acceptable for the township. The other question I would have is Arthur Street. Downtown, we've got that on the agenda now for 27, 28. Kind of defeats the purpose in my mind to be planning what downtown Elmira should look like. We haven't figured out how traffic is going to bypass or not bypass downtown Elmira. How the two designs would be totally different. So that's not being recognized, or else our timelines aren't realistic and we're going to have a project that doesn't work. And then third, I know capital is always a constraint. Wondering how prioritization is done. I'm looking at roundabouts on Listowel Road. There's two of them, I presume. They're supposed to be built. Traffic lights are there, but it's not on the 5-year forecast. I see two other roundabouts on the forecast at $3.8 million a piece. I'm wondering how's the region finding ways to do things more cost effectively. We talk about combining projects, working with municipalities, but I'm sorry, $3.8 million for a traffic circle. It begs questions from the taxpayer. And then Heidelberg, we're having reconstruction there, resurfacing there. That means the speed camera infrastructure gets pulled out after a year because it's going to be in the way. This is a very snide comment, but it seems like the region pulls out speed camera infrastructure 6 months after it puts it in. And is that good use of tax dollars? So to that one taxpayer I heard earlier. So that's my rant, but I think it's something that as Township Woolwich needs to get their voice heard regionally.
So maybe I'll summarize, I'll try to summarize the question. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how you and the township work together to prioritize and you know, go forward. You know, do you have a sort of a standard, a rigid standard that fits, that everybody fits in the box, or do you go to communities and look specifically at their needs? Or can you talk a little bit about how that cooperation, collaboration happens?
Through you, Mayor Shantz. First of all, I do want to apologize, and I understand how frustrating it can be when you look at one project costing X amount compared to another project, and why do we decide to put one project in versus another project? And there are many things that we look at and many reasons why we might decide to go ahead with the project. Sometimes cost of project is due to land acquisition, so land is expensive, and so a project cost can go up. The reason we might put something in is also due to safety. So if there's a lot of collisions, maybe putting a roundabout in, for example, might make it safer. Nothing is guaranteed in life, so I can't say to you, yes, it is going to make it safer. In terms of collaboration between the townships, the cities, and us, every year we meet with each of our area municipalities. This year, we've sent out our 2025 council-approved TCP to each of the municipalities, and we asked them to go through each of their projects and tell us what is important to you. What is it that you would like us to build, and give us justification for that? Because there might be reasons that we don't understand. Because you are more on the ground level at the area municipalities, you are more in touch with your constituents, so you might have more information that maybe we're not privy to. So we do ask, and the area municipalities let us know. And then we work with them to say, okay, maybe this project is not as important or necessary as this one, because this one might have water needs. So if you have a water main that comes in that can't service a whole neighborhood, if it breaks, you're going to take a whole lot of people out of water. Maybe that's more important than maybe a roundabout. But it is a balancing act, and it's trying to fit in as much as we can within the budget that we have. And like we mentioned earlier, we are looking at our asset management plan and trying to figure out our levels of service to the public and what is affordable for a taxpayer. Because to be honest, if you gave me money, I could build anything and everything that you guys want, but that's not how it works, right? So there's only so much money I have, and I have to figure out, we as the team between the city, between the region and the townships in each of the cities, we have to figure out how to make it all work in a responsible manner for the taxpayer.
Councillor Schwinn.
And that is a balancing act. I guess I'll take all my points down to one example. We've got Arthur Street reconstruction, which we've got a baby Arthur Street downtown in Meyer for the next 2 years, hopefully, until they're done. But how are you balancing what Arthur Street needs today without understanding what Arthur Street will need in 25 years or whenever a bypass comes to fruition. To me, you can't do one without the other. I'm trying to understand that.
I'll just add to that. That's been a frustration for a number of years because we knew that Arthur Street needed to be done, and we said, well, let's not do it until we know what we're doing. And a bypass is part of that whole picture, and the whole process is taking quite a long time, and so there's a lot of frustration in the community over that. Someone told me they sprained their ankle on Arthur Street. It's bad. Did you drive down? It's bad. It's really bad. Mr. Poupé, were you wanting to chime in?
I think through you, Mayor Shantz, to council, Arthur Street is a difficult project for all of the things that we are aware of: the bypass, the traffic, the revitalization of the core. And I think we're in that process. If we want to look at a bit of a silver lining, like, we're not talking about getting into it, we're into it and we're wrestling. I think that's the best way to do it. And things aren't happening as quick as we would all like. But I would say there's a bit of a saving grace. When I arrived in 2012, they were going to hurry up and pave it, and we had to do some work on it. So in a way, it did buy us time, and I'm not trying to justify any of the delays. I'm just suggesting too that we always have opportunities, and I think we continue to have opportunities now. I think the fact that it's in the capital program in 27 and 29 affords us a bit of time to do a little more wrestling, because I think the struggle is real. And as long as I've been here, and for every project I've been involved in with the region, there's always competing interests. We're competing interest for pedestrian connectivity. We're competing for traffic movement. And the region they are movers of traffic, of commerce. That's what their infrastructure is really doing. And then they've got a transportation bend. And quite frankly, we don't have necessarily the same capital. We don't have the same land. We have Church Street, that is a very narrow corridor. That was a very difficult cross section to wrestle with and try to fit things in. So, we're always up against constraints. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Councillor Schwint. It is a frustration for all involved, I would argue, at every level. But I do think that we are going to come out the other side, and sometimes a good wrestle gets you a good decision at the end. So it's not going to be an easy ride, Arthur, because there's a lot of competing interests on that, and the corridor is constrained. And we know that Woolwich is looking for different things than maybe the region is at this juncture in time. And that's where I think we need to get back to the table, and that's what we're actively pushing for, to have some of that internal engagement. I can tell you that there is a Teams meeting happening with some staff to see if we can narrow some of the issues down and then bring a greater group together before we go to public, because that needs to happen. There needs to be a public engagement. I think that's the piece that's missing. But again, it's not going to make sense to bring something that we don't agree with. So that's where I think we are in that process, if I could share a bit of that real struggle. But that's not completely uncommon. But I appreciate the bypass has an impact to the reconstruction. And we've talked about this. I know, Mayor Shantz, we've been part of that problem. And what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? So I think the fact that we're in the process right now is helpful. Now we just got to navigate. And again, we got a little bit of runway to deal with some of that, to go forward. So I'm hoping that that's the silver lining, that we are going to get through this. And sometimes you got to do a little arm wrestling to get there, is all I'm going to suggest.
Hindsight's 2020. I would have taken the paving 13 years ago if I knew what was going to transpire. Councillor Grant, did you want to chime in?
No, Councillor Bryant had kind of touched upon my concerns.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Bryant?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, and then.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It doesn't concern these particular projects, but just a question. If a developer is planning to put something in that abuts a regional road, and I'll give you an example. A gravel pit has gone in on Shant Station Road. All the traffic will be heading southbound. They're coming out in a valley in an 80-kilometer zone, making left-hand turns. There's no acceleration lane to go south. Like, this is a dangerous situation. And I know at the time the region turned down putting in that acceleration lane, and I don't understand why. Because to put it in now, the region would pay, where at that time the developer would have had to pay for that. So is there any reason why they would have turned that down? It's a concern because it is going to be an accident zone.
I don't know why it was.
I'm just throwing it
turned-
out there because it is something
turned
to-
down because again, I look at projects from a higher level, my team and I, and those are determined by the traffic group.
Right.
It's something that I can take back to the team and
Yeah, I
ask
would
them.
appreciate it because I know there's accidents that will be happening there. The gravel trucks are going to start coming out this year, heading south in a fog zone because it's a valley, and they will be loaded trucks having to go up a hill in an 80-kilometer zone, turning left across traffic coming and heading into southbound traffic. And there's no acceleration lane there. It's a dangerous situation, and it should have been fixed when the pit was going in, so the developer would have had to pay for it versus the taxpayer. So that's a concern for the residents of Maryhill and Bloomingdale that come down there and use that as a commuting zone.
Okay.
Just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks. I see you taking some notes, and the ones that you're taking back, you'll send us some kind of written
Yes.
response. Thank you. Councillor Cadeau and then Councillor Schwint.
Thanks. Recognizing budget constraints. I mean, we've gone through budget. It was a difficult year for everyone. But I guess the question really stems around equity. Residents of Woolwich have been vocal about the perceived lack of services, whether it's the bypass, whether it's Arthur Street, whether it's the new highway. So does Region have any metrics about the level of service that each township is getting? And I'm just thinking like $32 million over 5 years. Could we get a percentage of what the taxpayers of Woolwich are paying Region and what that envelope is purchasing in roads? Does that make sense?
Correct. So if you gave me $1, how much can I build with? Well, how much
many
that
roads?
$1 am I using to build the roads? I can look at those calculations and send it to you.
Could we get comparators for other
Each of
townships
the
as
area
well?
municipalities?
Yeah.
Yes, I can, through you, Mayor Sean, sorry. I can create a pie chart or a graph or something so you can see it more visually.
Thanks. The regional committee last week, Mayor Shantz brought a motion forward about the speed limits in rural school zones. One of the outcomes for that motion is a rural speed zone strategy. I forget the exact term. Can you outline what that process will look like from the regional staff, how they're going to, I guess, get input and what they're going to consider so that we as a township and township residents can maximize our input so you understand what our needs are?
I think that's probably a different department for them. It's probably not a fair question here, but
I tried.
yeah.
So sorry, yes.
Anyone else? No. Okay, thank you very much for sharing your projects with us, and we look forward to some of the additional answers and yeah, getting some capital projects done. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, our final presentation this evening is an update. Oh my goodness, having trouble talking. Update on the asset management plan progress presented by our asset management coordinator, Chelsea Raymond, Simon Lau of Aspire Consulting, and Christopher Billette of Hemson Consulting. So thank you all for joining us, and you're up.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Council. Before you tonight is a draft financial strategy developed for the 2025 Asset Management Plan update. A final Asset Management Plan report will be brought to Council in June for approval as part of the requirements for the last phase of Ontario Regulation 58817 that's due July 1st of this year. This financial strategy considers the investments required to support existing infrastructure and the impacts of growth for the long-term asset management goal of providing services at the lowest life cycle cost. Asset management is more than a single plan. It's high-level, holistic, and forward-looking planning approach to manage physical infrastructure in a way that balances asset performance, cost, and risk. Asset management plans are also living documents that report on the information contained in the asset register, frameworks, and strategies at a particular snapshot in time. The financial strategy presented tonight forms part of that snapshot by identifying investment needs and various funding sources using the best available data. As you review the draft financial strategy, Council has an opportunity to provide feedback as we work to finalize the reporting for June. It's important to keep in mind that the Township is at the beginning of its asset management journey, and improving asset information, service level understanding, and integrating an asset management approach into the long-term financial and capital planning is ongoing and repetitive process that will continue to support improved decision-making in the future. With us this evening, I'd like to present Simon from Aspire Consulting and Christopher from Hempson Consultant, who have worked with staff to develop the financial strategy and will provide a more detailed overview for Council tonight.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Good evening, members of Mayor and Council. So kind of getting right into it, really what we're presenting today is the asset management financing strategy as part of the process to develop the proposed level of service in the 2025 asset management plan. One of the key things to recognize, kind of thinking as we're kind of developing this asset management plan is recognizing that a financing strategy is an evolving process. There's certain inputs that we need to think about when developing this type of sort of analysis. We need to think about the asset management plan data that we have available. We need to think about the life cycle activities, the work that's needed in order to be able to meet proposed levels of service over the 10-year period. We need to think about those costs, and that's going to be an important component kind of today. We have to think about the feasibility of those costs. Can we actually undertake all that work? And we want to think about this being kind of the first round that the Township is taking on this type of detailed analysis. So we want to make sure there's an element of continuous improvement kind of going forward. The key inputs of this analysis are based on available public sources of information. So that's one of the key things that we want to emphasize about the analysis. We start off with the 10-year capital budget. It's utilized as the basis for the analysis. From that budget, we've removed the growth-related projects, and the reason for that is kind of captured in that second point there. That reason is because we're using the 2024 DC study to inform the growth-related portion of this analysis. When we think about asset management, we're not just thinking about the infrastructure that's in place now. We want to think about everything: future infrastructure, existing infrastructure, and so on. We're thinking about that future infrastructure because there are cost implications aside from those costs that can be funded from development charges. When you place a new facility, there are going to be costs to the Township of undertaking that work and maintaining that facility and repairing it over time. So we've calculated long-term costs or long-term provisions for replacement. One key assumption here is that your major facilities captured through that DC study are captured in the 10-year period of the analysis. Some other components on costs on the proposed level of service. My colleague Simon is going to talk about this a little bit later, but also the proposed level of service costs through their engineering analysis, and as well as any increases to costs proposed through the roads needs study. So you can see that we're looking at various pieces of information to kind of put this together. The analysis is all shown in 2025 dollars, and at the end of the day, we want to answer the question: what are the tax and rate levy increases required to undertake the 10-year costs shown in this analysis? Right into the first component here, on the first part of the equation here is the cost side. So over the 10-year period, the analysis is looking at about just under $160 million, so $158.6 million in costs associated to the tax-funded services. So the tax-funded services for the purposes of this analysis is all your services and assets, except for water and wastewater services. The analysis looks, you can see the kind of the donut chart on the right there. That's the breakdown of those data sources and those components of costs. The largest really being related to the costs that are captured through your 10-year capital plan for state of good repair, and as well as what we call the benefit to existing shares of projects that are growth related but can't be funded from development charges. So we have to keep that in mind, that there are components of the growth projects that we can't fund through those development revenues. There's also the components from the roads needs study, as well as the incremental cost to meet the proposed levels of service that Simon will talk about in a bit, and cumulative provisions for expansion, what we call those long-term costs, thinking about beyond the 10-year period and what are the costs associated to new infrastructure in the future. That $158.6 million, looking at the donut chart on the right, is largely driven by roads. Not surprising, a typical finding for municipalities of your size. About 55% is related to sort of the road network. Looking at the other side of the equation now on the funding. So in total funding, we've identified over the 10-year period a cumulative amount of about $72 million. And the question that we're asking here is, if we were to maintain funding at current levels, so 2025 levels, how much funding would we have available? And that's what this pie chart is showing. So the tax funded contributions to reserve making up the lion's share, just under 80%. We have CCBF funding, so from your gas tax, and as well as OCIF funding over the next 5 years as a little more risky. So we haven't included over the 10-year period. We just assumed over sort of a 5-year period. Now, what does that mean in terms of both of those pieces coming together? So what we want to establish is sort of a benchmark or a baseline analysis for this financing strategy. The bar chart, or the bar on the left there, represents our total cost that we just saw, $158.6 million, and the bar on the right representing the funding of $72 million. So under that scenario, we're left with a gap of just under $87 million that would need to be funded over the 10-year period. Giving that a bit more context, first of all, that is a significant gap. It is very substantial, but not atypical of what we see of municipalities of your size. To bring a little bit of context, what that would mean if we were to close that gap over that 10-year period, that would mean an approximately 8.4 increase per year, every year over the next 10 years to your infrastructure levy in order to sort of achieve those costs. So your current infrastructure levy is at 2.5%. That infrastructure levy would need to be at 8.4% to fill that gap. In 2026, for context, that would mean about an additional $1.5 million. Keeping that baseline sort of in mind, this chart represents that same information in a bit of a different way. These are your annual contributions and the forecast. So today in 2025, you budgeted about $5.7 million in contributions to reserves. To close that gap that we saw in the previous slide, those contributions would need to basically multiply fivefold by the end of the 10-year period to well over about $25 million. And really that would be about, a total sort of increase of about $19 million in contributions over that period. So it's important to point out here that, what we're trying to show here is sort of that benchmark, what we need to do in order to close that hypothetical gap. But at the end of the day, for every year in this particular chart, if we were to not undertake any of those increases, what really happens is that those increases need to be made up in later periods in our 10-year gap. Our costs don't change, but our funding needs to be made up over a shorter time period. Keeping with that theme of establishing a baseline, it's important for us to do kind of our due diligence and looking back at some of the recommendations done in previous iterations of the asset management plan. So we did go back all the way to 2013 and look at the 2013 asset management plan to see what was recommended through that analysis. At that time, there was a recommendation for an increase of 4.33%. The chart here represents sort of a scenario, kind of a backwards looking hypothetical scenario, just to see what that increase would look like if it was undertaken at that time. The green bars represent the estimates of the actual increases since that time, whereas the gold bars represent the increases if that 4.33% increase was implemented. What you can see there is in 2025, our current contribution or actual budgeted amount of $5.7 million is in contrast to what could have been done with that 4% increase. It would have been an additional $3.7 million in 2025 in that sort of hypothetical scenario. So to add to that, in order to close the gap that we saw in the previous slide, it would only be a 4.5% increase as opposed to 8.4%. So you can just see as an illustration, if those contributions would have happened, the increases going forward would have been lower. And I'll make one key point here that obviously this is an analysis for us to kind of look back at the documentation that we had before. Obviously these decisions are from the council at the time, but we want to do our due diligence on looking at historically what actually happened versus what was recommended in those asset management plans. So sort of back to the reality here then. what we want to present to council are some more feasible financing strategy scenarios. We recognize that 8.4 increase is significant and is unlikely to be something that any municipality of your size wants to undertake. But that said, what we want to do is present some more or some strategies that are a bit more feasible. The chart here represents those strategies that we've sort of come up with based on the analysis that you just saw. The first one being the base case, that's our closing the gap over that 10-year period. That's our 8.4% increase. Strategy 1 proposes a 6% infrastructure levy. So that's what you have today is your 2.5. That strategy would assume it's 6%. What that means is we'd have total funding of about 129 million. That would still leave a gap at the end of the period, but smaller, of about 29.2 million. That would represent about 1.1 million in 2026. Strategy 2 looks at what we saw in the previous slide, what our historical increase was proposed at that time, 4.3%. That would leave a gap of about 47 million. That's about 781,000 in additional contributions to reserves in 26. And financing strategy 3 is your current approach of your 2.5 infrastructure levy, assuming that's maintained over the 10-year period. That would still leave a gap of about $65 million, but nevertheless smaller than our benchmark sort of gap. That would be an additional about $451,000 over that in 2026, sorry. One final piece here, we're looking at the water and wastewater side on the rate fund for the rate funded services. So similar approach, the bar on the left representing the total 10-year needs. That's about 46.1 million. That's for both water and wastewater services combined. If we were to maintain the current funding levels, we would have about 22.6 million. Oh, apologies for that. And we would have about $22.6 million in funding available. That leaves a gap of about $23.6 million. Closing that gap would mean an additional 4.5% per year in additional contributions to water and wastewater reserves. That's about $524,000 in additional per year. Now, that said, the impact for the rate-funded services for water and wastewater is much more moderate, as you can see, compared to the tax side. And these increases are generally in line with what you've already seen through your rate study, and as well as the rates that have been proposed to council. So if you continue the course of increasing your water and wastewater rates in line with the recommendations through that rate study and through your budget, you'll be able to manage this gap much easier than obviously the tax-funded services. With that, I'll hand it to my colleague Simon here to kind of finish off this part of the presentation.
Yeah, we had talked earlier just about levels of service with regards to it. So we've put up 3 different bar graphs on this page here. To the one on the left is kind of the today's state, where we look at the levels of service and what the current performance of our assets are and then on the middle slide in the next 10 years, if we stay the current course of the baseline, you can see the shift towards how more of the assets become underfunded, the performance drops. Whereas if we meet the proposed levels of service in the funding towards that, you can see the performance increase. And a key takeaway on this slide is that it is over the life of the 10 years. And the current state of what we've seen in the assets is a lot of new infrastructure that's been put in. So as you go further on, you look at a lens where you're looking at years 15, 20 out, the story is actually quite different, and you'll actually see a significant change towards how the shift of the asset condition is. And it starts going towards the red and the very poor. So by adopting the correct level, you're going to be able to push and shift the performance of the assets to make them last longer, to be able to run them to a better state, because of just the 10-year span isn't a significant time horizon to look at it. And it's a similar story, but lesser so on the roads network. It's a similar story as well. Currently, we have a very large, significant area or portion of our assets in a very poor, and being able to move to a better state. Looking at just the baseline, we'd be shifting the curve up, investing in towards maintaining the assets into a better state. No different if we're able to achieve the proposed level of service with the funding that's been requested, you'd be able to get it even higher. But again, no different, a lot of new development. It skews the story, it changes the narrative a little bit as we look at what's been done in years 15, 20, 30, 45 years out based on the asset life. And then the last one, just on that to close it out, as we were looking at the rate funded side, it is already a better state. It's been invested, been worked on, sustained better. So the current state today is in a position where you've got maybe 20% of the assets in the very poor, but it gradually gets smaller because of the investment that's been put in with the current funding that's available, and it continues to get better if you look at the proposed levels of service on that side. As we're able to achieve that, it gets even better to that perspective. there's obviously many different ways to close the gap, and it's also based off the data that's been available. One of the things that we looked at is, we want to certainly seek additional funding from other levels of the government to support that. We want to look at how the investments are being increased or adjusted to the infrastructure, look at the data quality that we have based on the data that's been given, the performance studies and the information that's going to change the asset condition itself and be able to affect what the model and investment requirements will be in the later years out there. And that brings back within the asset management plan itself what some of the levels of service measures are, and making sure that we're able to track them and quantify them, use that data to be able to inform the decisions as to what type of investments or capital work has to be done. And a big piece that goes to it is risk tolerance in terms of the long-term capital planning itself. Should we choose not to do a particular project or to assess certain health, what the impact is and how that's going to impact the capital strategy that goes on. So working through those is going to be some things that will be looked at within the project, within the program itself. And of course, it's been brought up, the whole integrated process to financial planning. It's not just, one snapshot. It is a life cycle, it's a process that has to go through. So these things are being considered within the financial strategy as part of the asset management plan. And then with that, obviously, we want to take into consideration comments provided. We want to work towards into those next steps, refining the levels of service, looking to achieve what those proposed targets are, update the financial strategy within that, and bring forward a plan that can be approved or worked through before the July 1st deadline. And as I mentioned before, a significant piece is obviously the journey towards asset management itself, looking at data quality. It's going to be, we'll have an iteration done this year, but it'll be an evolution that continues on with the township here. So with that, based on what we provided, I'll open it up to questions, Mayor, chance through you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Who wants to start? I guess I'll start then. In some ways, it doesn't matter how we compare to other municipalities. This is our problem and our issue to deal with. But in another way, it is a more global problem than just ours in terms of especially advocating to other levels of government. How are we doing in comparison to others? And can you comment in some way on that?
I think as Chris had mentioned earlier, it is thank you for the question, Ms. Johns. It is a common theme that we're seeing across all municipalities in Ontario. There is an infrastructure gap that is looking to be closed, and everyone is working towards solving the same problem that's being presented.
Okay. Councillor Schwint.
Okay, so the numbers are pretty staggering, and there's not going to be one solution to fix this. That's obvious to me. So we look for other sources of funding, higher levels of government. Okay. And we're going to have to look at our levels of service and how do we stretch these assets longer, obviously. But the third one, I guess, is Mr. Poupet. How do we start as a township figuring out how to make our dollars go further in building and maintaining our current assets? We've spent a fair bit of money on the management plan. When do we switch over to operations to do a better job on making our dollars stretch further in our activities?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Schwint. So good question. Thank you for the presentation. That was really well done. I appreciate that. I think that in Woolwich's case, what we would like to start to do, and you don't know till you know. So I think this is a really good step in the right direction for us to look at conditions of our assets, look at the levels of service we are providing, and then wrestling year over year, is that an appropriate level of service or not? We think to right-size the ship, we are going to have to make some tough decisions, and that may include decreasing certain levels of service to maintain other levels of service until we can move forward. And we saw that challenge with the tax supported piece. That's obviously the biggest concern, is how we do that. But for example, I can tell you that we have had a roads database for at least since 2009, but we are just now going to look to leverage data-driven decision from that model. We just haven't really used it or understood it very well. So I think that's an incredibly important piece for us, is to start using the model. Because what we've gotten ourselves into trouble with in the township is growth pressures out of our control have driven infrastructure investments that maybe weren't the most appropriate investment for the township, right? So again, decisions need to be made. But I think that alone, and when we make decisions, at least we're eyes wide open. Here's what the model's suggesting we need to do. If there's a deviation from that model, hopefully we can get to a place, and we can't yet. So I don't want to set ourselves up for failure going forward that you expect this in 2026 deliberations, but we get to a place where we can start to run scenarios and see what that looks like and the impacts overall. I mean, with the finance department looking to increase resourcing there, that's going to be a great help, because we haven't been able to even run those financial models. And when we have condition rated models, we need to marry those together and see what that looks like. And then of course, council is well aware of our development growth pressures. And I think we need to look to upper government levels. If we have a housing crisis, which we all are hearing and believe we do, then there needs to be some investment as well on that. And it can't just be the DC model that does that, because that is driving cost of new homes as well. So there's a whole lot of pieces. There's advocacy, but I think to your point, Councillor Schwint, there's not one size fits all. But I think there are incremental changes we can make starting now, and this is a big step forward. What do we know? And here's what we know, and we always want to improve going forward. So this is a snapshot in time, and we intend to improve going forward with better information, and hopefully that leads to better decision making.
Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm actually going to share a couple of excerpts from an email I just received this evening, and I'm going to paraphrase a couple portions, so bear with. The roads in Elmira have been left for so long, it's almost impossible to catch up. Some roads are made up solely of adjoining potholes. Try driving on Barnswallow. So many folks are experiencing damage to their vehicles with no recourse from the township. We as residents of Elmira have to choose between fixing our cars or paying taxes. Can you please address our roads at the next council meeting? This isn't the first email I've got like this, and I'm sure it won't be the last. You drive around our streets, they are in poor shape. Not really much of a question there. I just wanted to share this for council, but if I had to ask a question, do you have an idea when Barnswallow is going to be addressed? And if there are any interim measures while we await reconstruction?
Yeah, through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Cadeau, later on this evening, we'll have a tender award report for our paving program. What's important to understand is there's a number of programs that we do. The overarching message to the road system: drainage, drainage, drainage. If you can't fix drainage, don't throw money at a road system. That's important to understand. And the other piece that isn't always well understood is if a road is in a condition such as Barnswallow, there is no cost benefit any longer. And what I mean by that is, I mean, it's already considered what we determine a now need. Obviously, it's a now need. I think everybody would understand that part of it. But there is no longer a fiscal benefit because it's completely broken. So obviously we have a number of road systems like that we have to manage, but there's not a cost benefit to doing that. So that's an important understanding too. The cost benefit comes to keeping the good roads good. So if we have a road, and we often come across as, why are you touching that road? It looks good. But it's at that space where you spend that right dollar in investment, it's going to save you $4. Because if you do nothing, it's going to degrade and fall off a cliff essentially. There's a nice graph that shows how a road deteriorates. And when you invest in crack sealing, keeping water out of a road system, when you do a proper shave and pave at the right time, that extends the useful life, and that is the intent of the OREG. So that is inherently baked into managing a road system properly. And I'm not saying we get it all right. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute Woolwich is on top of their game with that. Funding dictates that, and I just explained other decisions driving the bus at times for infrastructure renewal. So to that end, in specifically answering question for you and the public regarding, we are well aware of Barnswallow, and it has absolutely blown up exponentially. I mean, we saw this year, the winter. Barnswallow and Whippoorwill, I would argue, are both in similar boats. Both need reconstructions. Barnswallow is slated for reconstruction in 2027, but in the meantime, we can't wait and leave the road like that till 2027. We're going to do a minor overlay, I'll say, to at least correct that and buy us a couple of years. And we're looking at Whippoorwill the same way, and we're going to be able to manage that through some of our operating dollars. So that's not in the tender, but I will preempt that conversation because I was planning on having that later on this evening, that we will look at using some of the existing operating dollars to manage that, to get us some, buy us some time until the reconstruction happens. And we're well aware Whippoorwill needs a full reconstruction out there as well. Yeah, that's the facts. I think the other thing I would just state is that a number of years ago, and Birdland subdivision is a good example of this, we implemented a maintenance paving program. And essentially what that says, if you have a now need road, which means there's no more cost benefit to replacing it, it's a dead road. And I can think of a number of areas off of Nightingale. We had a number of cul-de-sacs all throughout that area. And that unfortunate subdivision only had one lift of asphalt, and it sat there for 50 years or so before we got in there, and people who lived out there could attest to the condition of the roads. But when we implemented the maintenance paving strategy, what that does is it just buys time. So what you say is you're going to correct the crown, you're going to correct the drivability of that road, and you're going to add about 2.5 inches of asphalt. It's not the solution. It needs a reconstruction. It's still a now need road, but we've bought ourselves time. And where you have low volume roadways, it works for a long time. You might get 15 years, great. But if we have to cut into the road because we have to do a repair on an underground piece of infrastructure, it's really not that detrimental to that. It would be detrimental cutting into a road that was fully reconstructed. We want to avoid that at all costs. Obviously, there's no bang for a buck to do that. But that's why I just wanted to explain a little bit of the programming that we run. But again, resourcing, funding, all that plays into those, and then external pressures as well with related to development have hampered some of the decision making. So again, not perfect, but that's the strategy going forward for Barnesville.
Thank you. Councillor Schlint.
Thanks, Mr. PA, for that update, because I think residents of Myra need to know what was happening with Barnesville this year, because that's, but when you look at modeling, I guess I was buying the explanation of the model up to the point where it was, there's no financial benefit to solving that problem. Now the roads deteriorate as much as it can. And from corporation, the Township of Woolwich, that's 100% true. But we're not here as a corporation, we're here to serve the residents. So we also have to factor in that model, the damage caused to the vehicles Councillor Cadeau was talking about. And that all of a sudden becomes the annual cost that we're incurring if we don't fix it. So I think on major arterial roads like Whippoorwill, Barnswallow, Arthur Street, since the region's still here, we do need to take that into account and address them. The cul-de-sacs, I understand your model, and that does make more sense to me.
Through Mayor Sean's point well taken. I think that just to clarify the two pieces, we need to ensure that we are complying with minimum maintenance standards, and that would solve a lot of those claim potential problems that we run into too. So I think council did a good, because if you have, we're not going to be able to replace all of the roads that have failed. We have a laundry list of now need roads. What we do need to do is ensure that we are traversing those roads at appropriate timeframes and filling those holes appropriately. That's still a cost, and that assessment needs to be made. If we're continually filling holes, that's going to say, hey, maybe a maintenance paving strategy is a good opportunity. So it all sort of bookends together and part and parcel. And council did move the needle in a big way in our ability to be able to do that with the endorsement of a operations project supervisor. So I think that's going to be a benefit when we do onboard that position too. That's going to be a help in the right direction there.
Okay. Thank you. If I can bring it back a little bit to the modeling and the asset management plan that our consultants are here. So you've just heard us kind of rant a bit on some of our roads. Those pieces are all taken into consideration in this modeling, correct? Like you've got conditions of all the assets.
Thank you, Mayor Chancellor. Yes, those are part of it, and then through some of the slides when we talk about the capital investments of the projects or achieving the proposed level of service, the model takes into consideration a list of the projects that should be done to it. Jared was saying in terms of when to optimize the work and the activities to sustain them, or in some cases the capital projects were to rebuild or add another 2.5 inches of asphalt on top to deal with some of these problems. Those are factored in the capital budget, the 10-year plan.
And so in factoring them in, then either to you or to Jared, has that changed our priorities, or how does that speak to how we prioritize our projects? You can flip a coin.
Good question. Through Mayor Shantz to council. I guess what we're demonstrating today is a snapshot in time based on the best available data we have. So I think this is a complete evolution. What we've done is we've looked at what level of service we're providing and based it on that, and then come up with some proposed metrics. It's not to say that this is perfect. It's just with the, so in some, for example, roads, we have very good condition rating. It was easier to identify what our proposed level of service versus, or sorry, what our existing is versus our proposed. But in other asset categories, we need more data to do a better assessment. And I think that's what we're always going to continue to improve upon. But to your question, yes, it is based on the data that we have available, the condition ratings that we have, but in some cases, we've assumed a proposed level of service. So that is something that we're going to continue to wrestle with, because I think the overarching message in this plan right now is there's a funding gap based on a current and proposed level of service that we're going to have to make some decisions for, because if we're not going to increase taxes to that level to meet that, then we're obviously going to have to deal with certain service reductions in some area, shape, or form. And that could be temporary. I want to be clear about this too. I think some of the discussions we've had internally is there may be some temporary reductions based on funding until we can kind of turn a corner, and we don't know what that looks like going forward. But you know, staff want to come with something that's practical and implementable, because the reg is very clear about being sustainable. It's important, and it is all about spending the least amount of money to extend the useful life of that asset class. That's what the reg speaks to.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I guess where my mind was going, and since we were talking about Barn Swallow, obviously Barn Swallow is in the shape it is because we let it get there. And so what you're talking about is balancing, like not letting roads get to that point. So clearly we have roads that are at that point. Will this model help you to prioritize in a different way than maybe you have in the past?
Yes, through Mayor Shantz, the simple answer is absolutely. You know, it will be, it will help us to hold the line or improve the line. And I think there's some wrestling we need to do year over year at budget time. Are we going to hold, or are we going to look to improve it? And this may mean that there might be roads that we deem that have maybe water crossings, maybe those, you know, we can think of other municipalities, they close bridges. Woolwich hasn't closed a lot of bridges except for our steel truss structures. We've made a concerted effort to do a lot of bridge replacements, culvert replacements, and we've done a good job on that asset class. But you know, maybe there is less investment happening there to sort of reallocate some funds in other areas that need it and service. So short answer, the modeling all day long is going to be better. It's garbage in, garbage out. So it's always important to have the proper condition rating, and us to continue to do that and have that systemic knowledge throughout the organization. But absolutely, basing decisions on modeling is preferred.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Knowing that our final draft is coming in June, and wanting to have maybe a more fulsome discussion at that time about how to address the gap, will we be seeing some like suggestions of where we could claw back service in the financial strategy? So presented 3 proposed financing strategies, 2.5%, 4.3%, 6% of a levy increase. Would we also say in some of those strategies, see like if we're doing a 4.3 levy increase, these are the service areas that we may look to have reductions to also help close the gap? I think that might help in that discussion in June.
Yeah, I would take a stab at this, but through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Grant, I think that's exactly what we're seeking Council's direction on tonight, as well as what would you like to see us come forward with in June, appreciating that we do have a time frame to meet, but that's exactly why we're here tonight, is to wrestle some of that. Yeah,
and so maybe I would like to see that essentially is in part of that discussion around what is the levy that we're focusing on, what are some of the areas of service, because I do think we're going to have a very serious conversation about where and the level of service we're offering, and where we're going to either temporarily suspend or reduce for some time.
Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor Shantz. Through you, probably to staff, I'm looking at slide 10, and quite frankly, this is going to keep me up at night and haunt my dreams. But when I'm looking at this, you give us 3 strategies. There's huge gaps there as well. Is there anything that would preclude us from financing this over, say, 20 years to try to right the course? I know that 10 years is an extended period of time to try to make up some of the lack of investment over the past 10 years, but what are our options aside from raising taxes 6% or 4.3 year over year for 10 years?
So through the mayor, for the township, the sort of the revenue options are limited, and that's the case for all municipalities. To your point on can we do this over a longer time period? Absolutely. That is up to the discretion of council to decide whether we want to fund these particular costs over a longer time period. However, we have to be cognizant that if we are funding the costs over a longer time period, to sort of the point from staff, that there are implications to the level of service. That would mean that we would have to defer projects. We wouldn't have the funding available within our 10-year period to undertake some of those works that, or perhaps some of those poor condition roads. There perhaps would need to be other sort of remediatory work that needs to be done to make sure that the roads continue to be safe, even at their poor condition, to ensure that they continue to be safe and so on. So we need that's that implication to that level of service. In terms of the language in the regulation, it's up to council's discretion to decide how to fund this the infrastructure proposed, but just keep in mind that there are cost implications the longer we wait to fund those.
Just to follow up, if we, and sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts while I'm asking the question at the same time, probably not the best thing. If we were to do 10 years worth of work in the first 10 years without increasing taxes all that much, could we supplement that with debt financing that we could then pay back over 20 years? Do you understand what I'm asking? And maybe you answered that question already and I'm just asking it again, so I apologize.
Through the mayor, so once again, council's discretion. If you wanted to undertake a particular project and you didn't have the funds available to do it now, it can be debt financed. It's up to kind of your decision. Other considerations on the debt financing, ensuring that you're in line with obviously your internal debt policies and as well as the kind of the provincial limit. You're not at that anywhere close to that limit now, but that's something you'd have to think about kind of going forward, depending on the level of debt financing you undertake for these particular projects. For any projects that are related to capital state of good repair or repair and replacement, those debt payments would still need to be paid through primarily tax funding, or if in the unlikely case you have other funding sources, they can be done so, but they would be primarily tax funded as well.
Sorry, and if I may add to the first question you had there, if you do the work over 20 years, there is additional capital work that has to happen years 11 through 20 as well, that compounds above the $158 million.
Councillor Schwind.
So following up on Councillor Cadeau's comments, I guess my analogy would be if we borrow the money, it's like borrowing the money to replace the tires in your car, driving them for 10 years, and you're paying for those car tires the next 10 years while you're also buying another new set.
Maybe. Call.
Through you, Mayor Sean, so being kind of quiet so far, just wanted to add a few kind of comments to this discussion. Just to Councillor Cadeau's comment on the timing of this. We didn't really look at the timing of projects. So all of these projects some of these projects could be in year 2 where we wouldn't have the funding. So even the current strategy may require debt financing. So we didn't really look at timing and interest costs. We're just assuming that we'll have this. I think even without additional funding, there could be debt implications just to do whatever funding strategy that's recommended here. Another thing that we haven't really talked about is this is just the existing infrastructure right now. So this is the infrastructure that we have currently at the moment. We did look at growth related infrastructure, but only on the replacement cost of that. We didn't take into account the initial install, which we assumed would be 100% DC funded, and the township wouldn't need to take on debt to install those initial assets. We were just looking at the replacement cost of those assets. So that could also eat into our debt capacity and also our township available funding. So I've been also looking at growth, and there could be like another element of the growth-related costs just to get the infrastructure in place, and then this is looking at the replacement costs of that and all the debt and financial implications of all of this. All that to say, there's a lot of work to integrate this asset management plan to the DC study, to the capital budget, to the water and wastewater study, and hopefully present some kind of a reasonable budget to council as part of this.
Define reasonable. No. David.
I think what's interesting, I would add through you, Madam Mayor, is that some of the same discussions that you're having tonight would be similar to the discussions that were held in these council chambers back in 2012 when the roads and bridge needs studies were presented, and the whole, you should be having an infrastructure levy of 4.3%. The council of the day recognized that, well, that's not going to fly, and that we need to go after the federal and provincial partners. Yes, we're going to put an infrastructure levy in place, but we're also going to say we need our senior level government partners to be part of the solution. It's also why in these council chambers over the year, when AMO has lobbied for things like 1% sales tax, a lot of municipalities jumped on board with that advocacy because of the real need of the infrastructure deficits that exist, not just in this province, but throughout this country. It's also why there's been discussions over the years with respect to the province and looking at our outdated municipal property assessment and tax system. The revenue tools that exist for municipalities just are insufficient to be able to keep pace with the modern day realities of what it takes to meet the needs of a growing, thriving municipality. So, it is to underscore that it seems like these discussions go in cycles with respect to wrestling with the reality that it's very difficult for municipalities in this day and age without support with something like a share of the sales tax or municipal finance reform for obligations that we have, because it's difficult to really look at the realities. And that's why I'm sure people like Councillor Cadeau tonight are saying, well, can't we do this over a longer time period? Because the realities of all those financing strategies, you come to grips with the realities of what our residents and businesses will say, if those were to put into place. So needless to say, the struggle is real, the challenge is real, and as I said, this isn't the first council that's had to struggle with the realities that we can't do this alone. And I can't underscore enough that we need our federal and provincial partners to be part of the solution. And that's why I think over the years, the 4 townships have advocated jointly for stable, reliable, predictable infrastructure funding at a level that helps the municipalities address their infrastructure deficits.
Thank you. Just curious, if we were to lobby and be successful and we needed 8.4% every year for the next 10 years, how much would we need each year from other levels of government to cover that? Can you do that? Because my brain's not working tonight.
I've been asked a few times to do some quick math. I don't have the exact number, and Hemson might, but I think it's worth explaining a couple things related to that, Mayor Sean. So 8.4% is roughly, and Hemson may have the exact number, but I did roughly, it's 1.5 million, 8.4% this year. But this is where it gets interesting on the slide 8, essentially, where it's the kind of the green bars with the orange bars. So 8.4% is in 2025 dollars, essentially. So 8.4% in 2025 dollars is not the same as 8.4% that they show in 2034.
Sure.
And in that year, it would be around $3 million, essentially 8.4%, assuming that we got the 8.4% every year for the previous years, because it's all compounded.
Right.
because we're going from essentially 1.5 million to 19.4 million. That's the one I was referring to. So if you look at that small little bar in 2025, because this was a realization for me as well, that's not, I think there's 9 years in that. The bar that you're seeing at the end is not 9 cumulative years. So to Councillor Cadeau's point, if you defer any of those increases, that bar gets bigger every single year. So right now we would need 1.5 million in predictable funding in that hypothetical scenario, but we would need that number to be increasing by 8.4% the same way every year for the next 10 years.
Yeah, 1 year at a time. I saw an interesting chart, and I don't think I can call it up right now, but it was this is a bit of a rabbit hole, sorry, but it was in conjunction with the airport, and they were talking about the tax dollars that comes in from the airport lands, and it showed, I think it was $28 million per year in taxes that are paid from businesses, from income tax, from workers, all the total taxes on the airport lands. And of that 28 million, the municipalities, so split between the region and the township, was $600,000. The rest went to the federal and provincial government. And I said that night, and I'll say it again, that's why the system's broken. Well, but it's the whole system, right? Yeah. Anyway, I just had to say that again because it was a real aha moment for me. Anything else? Do you need anything else from us this evening to finish up for June?
I think we've gotten to some points here that we're going to take back with staff, and we'll work with them to kind of refine some of these findings for June.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We have some unfinished business. We have BIA budgets for St. Jacobs and Elmira. Jeff, Colm, someone who wants to speak to this, anyone?
Really briefly, through you, Mayor Shantz, when a member of council reminded staff that this was still on your to-do list. We've gone through the budgets for both the downtown Elmira BIA and St. Jacobs BIA, and Elmira BIA staff are confident that that budget can be approved if council is supportive. The St. Jacobs BIA can be approved as amended. Council will recall that they made some decisions regarding the MAT tax and removing the washroom allowance revenue from the township. And of course the MAT tax was an additional contribution to the St. Jacobs BIA. So happy to answer any questions, or at least try to, but we're bringing this back because it was an unfinished item from the 2025 budget deliberation.
There's a motion there. If anyone would like to make it, Councillor Cadeau, moved by Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Grant. Discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That's one of the easiest things we've done in a long time. We have one item on the consent agenda. Did I miss anything? Okay. We have one item on the consent agenda, and that is recommendations of committee of the whole dated Tuesday, April 1st. Moved. Councillor Grant, seconded Councillor Bryant. All those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. We don't have any items for information. Staff reports and memos, tender award. Mr. Poupé, I believe that would be yours.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you to members of council, just like to introduce Clayton Lovell. He is the author of this report. I think the report was very well done, lots of information contained in there, and he will be the one executing on the tender award. But I had agreed that I would present this year, and we'll pass it over to Clay next year. So stay tuned. In this report, I think we're happy that again, very competitive year. We chalk this up to this the unfortunate reality of some of the pricing we received is not a lot of work on the street this year. That's unfortunate. But there are spin-off benefits, and you can see that in the competitive process here. So on the tender between first and third, I think we're about 148,000 difference, around just over 7% spread between 1 and 3, 4%, only just like $40,000 odd between first and second. So incredibly competitive, good for us. And you can see that there is a budget surplus this year, as well as us looking to include additional work. So the recommendation before council is toward the tender to ECOSchools Incorporated, also known as Brandco Construction, at a total cost of just over $1.75 million after HST rebate. We're also seeking authorization to negotiate the additional work as outlined in this report. And we are seeking council's resolution to allocate the surplus money to be included in next year's paving program. And the rationale there is we are showing that unfunded right now to the tune of almost $800,000 next year. And we would like to keep that. And that sort of bleeds into the asset management reporting about a sustainable amount. We had identified that every year in our budget and our 10-year or 9-year forecast at that around $3.1 million in the hot mix account. So with that said, we've identified some of the projects we're doing. Surface asphalt, it's been long overdue, is Old Scout Place. I think it's been in the budget almost as long as I've been here. And we are finally moving forward to do the surface asphalt on that road and put that one to bed. Our big hot mix resurfacing program here is going to be Mary Hill Road from essentially Zinger Villa out to Side Road 16, and then include Side Road 16. There was some benefit to geography there. And as part of that, this is important, it kind of bookends in with Waterloo Regional Police and road safety. We will follow up with an amendment to the traffic and parking bylaw to reduce speed limits on Mary Hill Road from 80 to 60. And that is driven by the amount of curves and vertical bends in that roadway. From a safety perspective, I think those who know, it's a difficult road, and that speed limit doesn't make sense to us when we were doing a much better riding surface, and that'll help in our ball bank curves and our signage requirements in those bends. So we think that just makes some sense, and that's in the endorsement. But that will follow up through a memorandum in the future here before the road is open to the public again. With that, though, there were some changes to the budget. Council will recall we had Peel Street and Winterburn and Sunset Drive. I believe Sunset Drive was about $100,000 as a maintenance paving program that we were looking to do and get some economy of scale. That was removed to meet budget constraints. And we have since reviewed Peel Street and felt it wasn't a big bang for our buck in that instance. It could hold another year. We're still going to keep the good roads good. I think that's the message that council needs to know. So we've adjusted, and we're looking to include a maintenance paving program in Floradale on Flora Pine Road. And the rationale there is we've been doing a lot of work out in that area. All of our culverts and bridges have been replaced. We know that Floradale Road will be resurfaced in the coming years. And we've just resurfaced, treated a large portion of Flora Pine Road, essentially from Arthur all the way into the town. And there is a significant deficient piece in Florida that's kind of like their barn swallow, I will say, that needs to be repaired. And so we looked at some cost benefit there from a maintenance paving perspective, given the pricing we received. So that's why you requested here. I spoke earlier about, well, barn swallow is not in here. We're looking to contain that in operating dollars, but I want to make clear to council that will be dealt with this year to buy us a couple of years until we get to the reconstruction project in 2027. And we will apply a treatment to Whippoorwill and make that riding surface improved. And again, that will just simply be a holding strategy until we can get to a reconstruction. There was a culvert. This is another good news story on economy of scale. DeLine Place. Unfortunately, we came across an issue with some failed culverts on DeLine. It is a dead-ended road. And we had included it in our capital bridge program, but thought because that we do culvert replacements as part of the paving program, it might be a cost benefit, and sure enough, there was. So we're getting a fairly cost-effective culvert replacement as part of this as well. And I think that's important to note. There were 7 firms picking up, again, very competitive process. Think it's important to note too, there's a lot of work that was done on the financial piece because it can get a little convoluted on what buckets are paying for what. So there is the Appendix D there that I think was more clear, but it is illustrated in the report. It'll be important to note that these are estimated costs for the additional work. We're looking at Fife and Lurch. That was our first foray into gravel road conversion. Unfortunately, we came across a couple of difficult roads and we've been trying to get this right. We have since vastly improved our approach, how we attack it. But it was unfortunately through a bit of a learning process here. So this is our third attempt at finishing off that section. We had to close it. It became that bad through the winter. So we will ensure that this fix will deal with it. We're hawking out a fair bit of material. We did engage Brandco ahead of this just to see if the additional work, they indicated yes, but hence the negotiations that have. So we've estimated and extended some unit pricing here to provide some estimates to council. Appreciate there is some contingency still built into this. We are still expecting a fairly significant surplus at the end of this program. And with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. Both Clayton and I are here available for that.
Questions? No? Yes?
Yep, I'm just wondering about timing on Burn Swallow for this summer. That's going to be a community question, so may as well answer it if we can.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Schwint. So what we are looking to do is include that as part of our padding program for surface treat. Appreciate that we're dealing with some last year's surface treated programming too. So it's kind of bookended there together. So what we will say is we'll get there as soon as we can and get that on the street as quickly as we can. Surface treat, the requirement for surface treat is it's no later than August 31st, which means we have to back that up. You're probably June or July with your paving, but we'll see what we can accomplish here. And it all kind of depends on the next couple of weeks on what we're able to come to with our plan and then to report back to council on this year's surface treated program. So a little bit of complication this year over other years, but we will look to do that as soon as we can.
Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, just a quick question. Just last council meeting, we approved a development there right off Flora Pine Road, basically in the stretch there that you'll be looking at doing the paving. Just wondering on the timing of that. Is it better to get that done ahead of time or once the project's done with all the heavy equipment and everything traveling over that?
Yeah, and through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Burgess, good question. So because it's a maintenance paving road, we have less concern. The problem is we don't know the timing of that. Looked at the development. It's not, say, a barn swallow development with the large subdivision. It's going to take years and years and years to accomplish. So we're not seeing a lot of value in holding off. We have the ability to do that now. We can certainly look at that development, see if there's damage or anything like that. We can deal with that, but we don't expect that's going to be a big problem. Barn swallow, and just maybe for the public's benefit too, part of that delay was ensuring that we had enough design brought forward from the subdivision so that we weren't in a situation where we were reconstructing the road and then having to rip it up in a short period of time. So we are at that place now, which is good news story. We are able to then execute on that. So just wanted to clarify a bit of the difference between barn swallow, say, and a Flora Pine.
Yeah, just one thing through you, Madam Mayor, to council to note. One of the things that we were discussing, in dealing with this report at SMT was, and as Jared has quite correctly articulated tonight, there's lots of merit and value with respect to allocating the surplus budget towards the 2026 paving program. But it's also important to note that probably since this council has taken office, there's been fiscal challenges that we deal with in any particular year, this is something that, as I said, has merit in doing it. At the same time, we'd be remiss if we didn't say that over the last few years there's been other challenges that have come up, and you may need to revisit this in the future. I'm not saying that you do, but it's just been quite a difficult number of years that things have popped up throughout that time period, and that that's something important to acknowledge. because this is a learning and growth opportunity for a new council, that there's merit in allocating this for the reasons that Jared's articulated, because we're behind on our program. Council's acknowledged that with the infrastructure, but we're also balancing a lot of realities. And I mean, that's kind of been the theme of tonight with respect to our asset management program, et cetera. So just wanted to also mention that from a learning and growth opportunity.
Anything else on this? Moved by Councillor Bryant, seconded by Councillor Cadeau. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Yeah, I had another question, but it's about gravel roads. And just, I've had one question on Scotch Line, but just in terms of our gravel roads, maybe if you could just speak for the public on how we get, I know potholes are bad in the spring, but are we improving on some of those?
Yeah, through Mayor Shantz. So we have an extensive gravel road network, over 120 centerline kilometers of gravel road. We feel the best way to deal with that is to convert. I think there's no magic. We have been unfortunately underfunding our gravel road program for a number of years. And, you know, with that comes challenges. We do have 2 graders. We experienced some mechanical failures last year that didn't help out. We're always battling weather. Mother Nature has the most impact on our gravel road network. Mother Nature doesn't have the same impact, say, on a surface treated road or a hard-top road. So I think that's some of the realities that we're dealing with. And one fortunate story, and some may not see it this way, we were really thinking we were going to get a lot of blow-ups as a result of the deep frost we had, and we had a deep frost. It was a very good winter this year, which is nice because gravel roads perform very differently depending on what frost is in the ground. The year before, hardly any frost was in the ground. They were a challenge for us in different ways. You can't grade a gravel road if it's wet. It just doesn't work. But at the right condition, you can take out all those potholes and get rid of washboarding in a couple of passes. So, you know, they can rebound. So we typically don't rate them based on what that rideability is at that very moment because it can change. However, with this year's deep frost, what was really helpful for us was the frost came out very slowly. So that was very interesting because we were driving around and you got to hit these at the right time for inspection. So I appreciate not all the roads perform the same way, and Scotch Line is a difficult road to begin with. It's very wide, and it does have a lot of pothole challenges. I will follow up with what the plan is. I don't have that information available. I'm not sure if we've even been there yet, but I know at the time that you had reached out to me, we hadn't, and we were behind on our grading, and that was related to a lot of the weather that we were dealing with. But I think we should be in a position that we should be able to attack some of those roads. But in general terms, we are finding there is not enough material on a lot of our roads to be able to do some of the really deep grading that we need to do, and that's simply a function of funding and those overlays. We're under overlaying essentially on our gravel road network, and we have been for some time.
Okay, maybe a question for budget time then would be, should we be looking at getting more material on some of the roads that we know we're not going to get to surface treat? Anyway, for budget.
Yep. No, that's fair. Take that away.
Not for tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Report on regional matters. You saw the summary that came out of the regional report, and it's getting late, so I won't belabor any of those things except for Mr. Councillor Schwint's going to put me on the spot.
I quickly want to comment on the committee meeting last week. Councillor Burgess and I attended. You brought the motion forward about the speed limits. I thought the delegates from the township did a great job expressing their concerns and opinions and what they're looking for. So I'm hoping that was well received. For next steps, I'm worried as a township that we make sure that we have our voice heard as the regional staff develop their recommendations. So I'm curious our staff's position, our council's position, on how we can maximize that input to make sure that when staff talk to the regional staff, they are supporting 60-kilometer-an-hour zones and rural school zones. We heard that investigating speed lights instead of cameras would be a good idea, and make sure we emphasize that message.
Yeah, I think part of the process is to be working with our staff, and so hopefully they can make sure that that message is heard as well. I won't necessarily know until they bring the report, and then we'll see. Yeah, David.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to council. So the acting commissioner has reached out, that's in charge of working with the townships on developing the rural strategy. They have asked for a township representative to sit on a joint committee to work through the rural strategy. So certainly our voice will be active and at the table in terms of representatives from each of the rural townships.
Outstanding activity list. Anything on that? Yeah.
Sorry, Mayor, it's not the outstanding activities list, but just a council update / report.
Yep.
I just wanted to thank the volunteers, the organizers, and the guests that made the Elmira Maple Syrup Festival a huge success once again. The weather certainly didn't put too much of a damper on the day. I know that flipping pancakes was a fun little pastime, although they got a little bit waterlogged by the end there, and I blame that for the reason that we didn't win. But it was a lot of fun, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to the team for representing us well. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but priorities sometimes change. There is no notice of motion. We do have bylaws. Someone want to move the bylaws? Councillor Cadeau, Councillor Bryant, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We do have another closed session immediately following adjournment of the council meeting, but before we do that, I would like to sincerely thank all those who took the time to speak to us tonight, who watched here or at home on YouTube, and who continue to engage with us. We wish everyone a safe and a happy long weekend. Now we need a resolution to go back into closed. Moved by Councillor Schwint, seconded by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Oh, this is for educating or training the members on the strong mayor powers training, as we didn't get to that in the other closed. Okay, Meet, can you please stop the live stream and place council in a breakout room?